Chantel coming? Does anybody know?
No, I just checked my email. I haven't received anything yet. I'm sure she'll be on soon.
Okay, we're good to go.
All right, then I will call to order the September 15th Oxford City Council work session to discuss Karzak funding. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bracken.
Here.
Mr. Ellerby.
Here.
Mr. Prithridge.
Here.
Mr. Snavely.
I'm here.
Ms. Southard.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. All right, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second.
Seconded.
Second by Mr. Ellerby. All right, so we're going to enter into discussion about the CARES Act funding. I guess I will start. I don't know if Mr. Elliott wants to start or Ms. Green wants to start.
Well, let me just make a few comments before I turn it over to Jessica, who's done all the lion's share work on this, talking to the agencies and whatnot. But as you know, at our last council meeting, we discussed the first and second round of CARES funding that we received. And we now have tonight on the regular agenda, I believe, 7 resolutions to disperse that money. So we have some funding left from the first and second round. And then during this time period, we were notified of receiving a third round of about $832,786. So that's what we want to discuss with you tonight, is ideas for dispersing these funds. And like I said, Jessica has been in contact with all of our partner agencies, social service agencies, and received ideas, I think, up until this afternoon. So Jessica, why don't you take over from here? Joe, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just read today where they still need one more vote to release the funds, and then the governor has to sign off on it. So it'll be a couple weeks probably till we see it.
Yeah, so I guess I should have made that point. We have not received the check for the third round, but we are anticipating that. So keep that in mind. Okay, Jessica.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you. And like Doug said, we have just over 225. Can you see it, everybody? Okay. We have just over 225 remaining from the first and second rounds. And we have an anticipated 832,786 for the third round. And that leaves us just over $1 million to allocate.
This year's highlight reel.
We have just hold on a second. Okay. Didn't think so. Okay. So what I'd like to do is go through each like I did last time, starting with basic needs. And then, but we do have, you know, one just like 700,000, like $1,731,646 requested, and we need to trim $673,635. So I have some ideas for trimming that we'll talk about at the end, but first I want to go through each of the requests.
Jessica, can I just ask that you just take less than a minute to real big overview? What are the goals of the CARES Act, and what are the criteria that, I mean, all these things I know you've gone through this, but for the sake of the public, what should this money be going to and not be going to?
Yeah, so the CARES Act dollars should be going to basic needs, educational support, public health, economic sustainability, are the large categories that it should be going to. And so we really tried to lump everything into those categories. And then it needs to be tied to our COVID response. And so for each one of these, I tried to show how it would help with a COVID response. And so that's kind of our starting point. Did that give you enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other questions before I dive in? Okay. With basic needs, the first is the Talawanda Oxford Pantry and Social Services is requesting an additional $53,000. So we have a resolution today for $42,000. But if we give them more, they can buy a brand new van instead of a used van. And this is a refrigerated food truck that's going to be a mobile food pantry that will go out to 6 locations and deliver food remotely so that people don't have to drive into the food pantry. So that's their proposal. The Family Resource Center, we had a really creative conversation, and it was, what if we purchased a cold shelter? And the idea came to maybe even purchase one of the hotels where they block large numbers of rooms sometimes, the Butler or budget in. And so we put 500,000 there, 450,000 to buy the hotel, and 50,000 for renovations. You'll see I've marked this as yellow. Those buildings aren't for sale. The owners haven't been approached. So we'll talk about feasibility a little bit later. The Oxford seniors was just notified that they have to test their staff in order to be open. They have to test their staff and participants like every 2 weeks in order to have their facility open. And so they felt like they needed 10,000 for that. And then I was remiss. I did miss some requests that Steve had sent me, and I apologize to him. It was in an email that just got lost. But they were requesting an additional 30,000 on top of what they requested before. So it'd be a total of 40,000 here. And that would be to go to, I can go through it verbally, but 15,000 more for a nicer or newer van for them. $1,600 more for their automatic door, $13,000 for an air cleansing in their building, and then $1,000 for a TV. And then for their adult daycare, they were asking for $4,000 for air cleaning and $18,000 for disposable gowns and face shields for helping the caretakers help people with toileting and hygiene and things like that. So that was $22,000. So together it was about $52,000 more plus this 10, so $62,000 more that I missed before this meeting. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then $25,000 for push for emergency and critical home repair. And this would be for homeowners, not renters, but the idea is to help them stay in their home in a safe way during the COVID pandemic. I'll stop there. Are there any questions on the basic needs category? Yes, Bill.
So like the TV, how is that? I know it would be great to have. I'm not disputing that it would be a wonderful thing. I guess my question is, are all these somehow at least tangentially related to the COVID pandemic?
I think the TV was, hold on, let me pull up I believe it was for like some online learning, like projecting, like you can project onto these TVs. But I don't want to misspeak. So let me pull it up real fast. Additional TV for virtual classes at the senior center is what they listed it as. So, other questions? Yes, Glenn?
This is just a procedural question. Are we discussing all of this individually as we go, or are we just going to go through all these and then save our questions till the end?
Would that be better maybe? I mean, I can just plow through them and then we can kind of take discussion at the end. Would that, to get a better picture?
I mean, I personally would prefer that. Otherwise, this is going to take a long time because we'll get sidetracked.
Okay. Well, then I'll just, if it's okay with you, I'll go through it. I'll try to slow down a little, but then if there's questions, we'll come back. So then the next one is educational support. I did get a Wi-Fi quote from Spectrum, and this is for all, not all, but most of our public parks, Uptown, Mary Day, the Community Park, and Leonard Howe, and targeted neighborhoods, currently the Mobile Home Community and the Parkview Arms. And they can get us all the infrastructure that we would need for $235,806. On top of that, we would have $12,000 a month. That would be, did I say that right? Excuse me, $1,000 a month for $12,000 a year for the actual Spectrum service. And they said the way to think about this is a giant, like think about almost as like a local satellite on a pole in our community. And then that satellite just beams out service to our entire town. We might need a couple of pole locations, but that cost is built in, and or finding tall buildings or structures that we own that we can put these, not receivers, but I'm losing my
Antennas?
antennas. They're going to spread out the Wi-Fi around town. And then for Parkview Arms and Mobile Home Park, they would run wires to the buildings. And so it wouldn't be out just in the public areas, it would be in their apartments. And they would have Wi-Fi that way. That was the highest amount, and it actually went down if you wanted to do just the parks or just the residential areas. Either one of those, the parks only was about $100,000, and the residential areas only was $160,000 approximately. Then the second, oh, go ahead, David.
I don't want to have, some of these things might have ongoing recurring costs beyond the infrastructure. So if you, like, as we're going through these, if you can just hint at, this thing would cost us year after year after year, X amount roughly, that might help me know whether we're going to buy infrastructure that we can support in 2022 or not. So thanks.
Yep. So the ongoing cost would be $12,000 a year. And then after 3 years, you might then have equipment upgrades. So I'll talk of, that's a good point. And then we have installing heat in the restrooms at the community park to allow for extended school by the pool, which is a supervised online learning that Parks and Rec is doing. But currently the bathrooms are not heated. And so when it gets cold, they may have to stop using that facility. So that was an estimate we wanted to put in there. So that is our total for educational support. Under public health, I put back in the public restroom being either a rental of the LCMB bathrooms or a trailer rental. To your point, David, the trailer rental would be something we could do till December and then get rid of it. I think if we truly invest in a public restroom, we will have ongoing costs as far as cleaning and maintenance that we will have to just absorb forever. And to be honest, I don't have that number prepared for you tonight. I can get it for you. The next one is I have $80,000 in technology improvements. And my two ideas here are something called Zoom conference rooms, which would allow us to meet, like us to meet in person, but to stay under 10 people, we could allow the public to participate virtually. So it would be upgrades in your microphones and upgrade in a screen to project the people who are calling in to participate, and some website improvements to allow for our public to engage with us virtually, like the utility bill sign up, communication tools that we're using. Like right now we're doing a lot of double work. Like I put a lot of things into an email and then I have to copy that entire email to put on the website. So this would streamline by building a website that allows for the communication tools that we're using. Those are my two ideas there. COVID testing for our community. We got a quote with McCullough Hyde to do $100,000 in asymptomatic testing for community members. This would be $75 a test. $100,000 would be 1,333 residents. I actually don't know if we'd hit that high. Talawanda did a testing and they hit about 200, but they only did it one day. McCullough Hyde is saying they'd be open for 4 weeks. They could do up to 48 a day. It's $75 a test and results would be back in 1 to 2 days. And it would be limited to those in the 45056 zip code. Then I put in at the health commissioner's request, I put in $50,000 for symptomatic testing for people who don't have health insurance. I'm working on the details on this one still, because Health Commissioner Baylor wanted it to be like you walk in and got a test, basically no questions asked. But the health industry really wants you to have like some sort of identification and social security numbers and things like that. So we're in discussions. So I don't have more than that right now, but we thought that 50,000 would be an adequate amount there. The fire department has requested 3 portable ventilators for transportation from McCalla to other regional hospitals in case of an emergency. This quote has actually come down from 60,000 to 40,000. So we have about a $20,000 savings there. Then we have a drone for monitoring rooftop parties. You could take pictures of people up there and help with trying to crack down on those parties. We have 10,000 for that. We have an emergency response gator. And this is because we have a lot of people using the trails. The trail is longer. This would be like a medical gator that you could go out and help people if there was an injury. And the tie to COVID would be there's a lot of people using outdoor facilities. There was an idea for a mobile recreation center. So Parks and Rec would take a mobile recreation center to various programs and do recreation with children instead of having them come to programming. And then the total for the city then would be 440,000. And Age Friendly Oxford asked for 7,840 to do a physical mailer of the city e-newsletter, which includes COVID information to 500 residents for 14 weeks for those people without access to a computer or who requested print materials instead of online. Under economic sustainability, we have, instead of reselling those gift cards, we have that the $200,000 would just be a grant. It'd be a grant to the businesses and we wouldn't ask them to like honor those gift cards in the future. So that's one idea. And the other is to help with more direct rent assistance to our small businesses. I have $100,000 there. And then with the Parks and Rec is not able to have their Uptown Halloween event. So they are bringing in a drive-through circus. So we have $10,000 to allow this circus to be for 2 nights instead of 1 night. So 1 night is 5,000. And then for the Chamber of Commerce, they had an idea for equipment for reimbursement for businesses for patio dining expansion and safety equipment. So those plexiglass barriers and higher booths and things like that. We had 10,000. Advertising for local businesses, especially when all the Miami students are gone, trying to just really drive people to support local businesses this winter at 25,000. They did ask for free parking uptown from Thanksgiving to the end of J term. This is really not allowed. Like, we can't benefit yourself. Like, so the 40,000 really is not, so I marked it as red, is not feasible. And then they asked us to cover chamber fees for all of next year at 60,000. So again, not feasible because it's next year. And then they did have lots of ideas for programming that they wanted to see the Red Brick Fridays. They wanted to see a holiday event. They wanted us to extend the Dora. And I'll be honest, I feel really uncomfortable doing any sort of events while the mass gathering ordinance is in place. I think we need to say no. One compromise that Doug and I spoke about would be turning back on the Dora after perhaps the students leave and having it open through the winter. So that's an idea. So the summary is, you can see the totals here, basic needs, educational support, public health, economic sustainability. I went ahead and made a recommendation of cuts. And this is just Doug, Joe, and I had a conversation. You don't have to agree with these at all, but we wanted to paint a picture about what it could look like. And so the option 1 is that we don't do the cold shelter purchase. The reason is it's not for sale. The owners haven't been contacted. And then there's like a really big building to like maintain and monitor and things like that. What we recommend instead is that we should make a commitment for cold sheltering through the seasons. But we actually really like the model where they're renting a block of rooms at these hotels and using them in that way. But then we don't have responsibility for the roof and, you know, the water bills and, you know, things like that. So that's an idea we wanted to share with you. We cut the chamber fees, the parking, the mobile recreation center. We lowered the Halloween event to 1 day instead of 2. And then I decreased the testing by 300 some people to allow for 1,000 people to be tested, but that saves around 25,000. And that's your savings. So it brings us right in line. The other is if you really love that cold shelter idea, like you're like, this is it, this is the one. What I did is I cut almost all the city ideas and the chamber. So you can see I cut the drone, the chamber, the Zoom communications, the technology and the website that we talked about, the public restrooms, the mobile rec center, the gift card programs, the grants to businesses, the Halloween event, the restrooms, the gator, and I decreased the testing. So that was a lot, but we have a little while to have a discussion now, and I'm happy to go back to any page you want to see.
See
Glenn?
Mr. Ellery's hand.
I would like to propose what I consider to be an elegant solution to this whole thing. Hopefully, my fellow counselors and staff members for the city may agree with me. So I like option 1 with an adjustment to it. And that adjustment is that we keep the mobile recreation center and that we remove the PVA and mobile home park Wi-Fi infrastructure thing, which would actually net us an additional $110,000 if my math is correct. And then we can put that back towards the asymptomatic and symptomatic testing for McCullough. And that'd be it. That would be my recommendation.
All right.
And you like cold shelter purchase of the building?
Say again?
The cold shelter purchase of the building?
That would still be cut. Now, like I'm on the Housing Advisory Commission, so and I remember, David probably remembers this too from being on the HAC. That was the whole point of the first purchase. Like we put money towards the purchase of a home, and it really didn't go well. And as a result of that, we still had an account that's left out there, and it's been sort of a remnant. And now we're trying to change that currently. And I just remember what all entailed that particular thing. And to multiply that by 100 times is a bad idea for the city, in my opinion.
I got you. I understand what you're saying now. Thank you.
All right. I saw Jason's hand, then I saw David's hand.
Yeah, I would not be a fan of that proposal. I think it gets rid of the 2 biggest things that we can provide to the most needy in our community, one being the cold shelter, and the other being Wi-Fi to the most vulnerable and least resource available groups in our town. So I would not be a fan. As for the cold shelter purchase, my understanding is, that's still very fluid in terms of the final amount. I don't believe that includes the city keeping up with any of the finances after purchase at all, as far as I know, but maybe we could discuss that.
It does not, Councilor Bracken, you are correct. So that is the physical purchase only.
Yeah, and my understanding at least is that the charities involved would be able to, staff and maintain that going forward. So there wouldn't be an additional cost. I also don't think it's very similar to previous efforts in any way. I think it's quite different, but that would be a lot to talk about.
All right. I saw David's hand.
So a quick question on the cold shelter. I mean, I do worry about the sustainability of anything that we invest in. And so the idea of as has been done in the past, of leasing a block of rooms as you need them, but then relinquishing them, means you can make that investment in the cold sheltering without having that physical infrastructure you have to maintain. When I think about our capacity, I'm not sure we're up for that yet. So I wouldn't want to devote such a big chunk to something that I think has ongoing costs that I'm not sure we can sustain. I have a question, and as far as the Wi-Fi, like, I think I would, in my mind, I would love if we could provide it to the parks and it would spill over into some of those communities. If we can afford it, I think that'd be great. Like I say, Mary Day Park, you could serve the mobile home park. And we're not necessarily providing it to a specific neighborhood, but it has those spillover benefits. My only thing that I would love to see more of, and you guys have heard me say this before, is, I would love to see things that we invest in be things that we can keep and use afterwards. And so one of the things I would love to see more of is, again, some of those things that enable us to amp up our public space uptown. And so whether that, again, is street furniture that we can use for other purposes, you can now buy kits for some of those public space improvements, so that rather than just having a plastic barrier in the alley to serve as Fiesta Chara, we can invest in some of those. I can see you can buy prefab parklets, for example. If we could buy some of the elements that could be used in the future, I would just like to see more of that, because I think that's a basic need we're going to have, is just how to use our public spaces uptown. And I just think we should invest more in that. Other than that, I think your option one looks good to me.
Here, I think I've got Jason, and then I've got Bill, and then I've got Joe, unless Joe, you need to jump in first.
The one thing that I thought that we talked about yesterday, Jessica, is that if the Family Resource Center could make a go at the cold shelter, that would revert back to us.
We did talk about that. Yeah.
So again, just keep that in mind.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Joe. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, the Family Resource Center is going to make a go of it. If they can't sustain it, or it doesn't work out, or they physically can't do it because they don't have the staff or whatnot, then it comes back to us. So we own a building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was next. My understanding is, again, things are fluid, but it would not be a burden on us that they could sustain that. But I guess that remains to completely be seen. But if you're talking about purchases that can help us going forward, this is a purchase that will provide something that we have to pay for, at least charities in our community have to pay for every year, and often don't have enough funds to do so, right? So one, if we're just paying for a block of rooms, that is really inefficient financially, right? And also, it doesn't last past this year. Well, this, we can help people right now, and if you're reading any of the economic indicators, there's likely an incoming eviction issue, right? An eviction crisis. So we might very much be in need of this even past our normal stuff, which already isn't being met. So as I see it, it's not going to have a cost going forward, most likely. And there's ways we can figure that out to make sure. But also, it'll provide something that we need anyway, indefinitely. So I'm all for the cold shelter. It seems the most natural thing, given the needs that our city has and will be having because of COVID.
All right.
I think I was next. And then
you are.
Chantel also had her hand up. I don't know if you saw her on your screen.
I'm switching back and forth. Go ahead, Bill, then we'll get Chantel.
Okay, thanks. I'm leaning towards option 2. I think that we do need to at least give a shot to the cold shelter purchase. I wouldn't immediately cut that, but we don't have any idea whether that's for sale or what it would cost if it were for sale. If you look at the things being cut on option 2, I think a lot of them are very tangentially related to the thing. The Halloween party, I'm sorry, I don't see that. And maybe I need education to understand why that's more important than a cold shelter. And I think the testing, I'm in favor of testing for people who are positive or who are showing symptoms and don't have insurance to cover it. I'm not in favor of just offering everybody drive-through testing for free and us covering all that when we could use it for, I think, more important purposes. So I would probably still cut the chamber fees and parking. I think we probably want the emergency response gator. If people are out walking more and using these things, which we were telling them they should do, then we need some way to get to them if a problem. So that's the one thing on option 2 that I would probably want to hang on to. That's just my 2 cents.
All right. Chantel?
I have a few questions and then some comments. I mean, my understanding is that if you have insurance, COVID testing is covered. Am I wrong about that?
You are correct. It's covered if you're symptomatic.
Okay. And then I think that the other, to follow up with Commissioner Baylor had said about wanting testing to be done, without questions. I do have a problem with asking for someone's social security card to receive the test. I think that that's something that's been shown to be pretty discriminatory on certain populations, especially those that are undocumented, because we know that even if you don't have documentation, you can still be passing the virus just as easily as if you did have another piece of paper. And then my other question, I thought whenever we were talking about the trails, we had talked about how we already have there's space for emergency vehicles to assist when an emergency happened. What happens if an emergency were to happen tomorrow? How would we get help?
You can get like a truck on the trail. This would be just a smaller gator, like emergency gator that is kept like at a trailhead, so it's a little bit faster is what the thinking is.
But there wouldn't be a person sitting there, so you'd still need another vehicle to get to
there. Yep.
So it's hard because I would be in favor of option 2, because to me that just sounds like redundancy of vehicles when you can already get a vehicle to that area. And then other questions, I believe we already have 2 drones. One owned by the streets and maintenance. And then I believe in our last CIP, we approved a $50,000 drone from our police service. I'm just wondering who would be operating this drone, if not the streets and maintenance or the police. It sounds pretty redundant. I don't know. I don't see many drones happening at the same time. So I feel like we could be using the other $50,000 drones we already have. And then to follow up with what Jason and Bill had said, that, that's the point of this CARES funding, is that we want to make sure that, especially as our federal government is kind of faltering with getting stimulus money to the people who need it the most, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a city to protect our own residents. And we know evictions are up on the rise, and we know it's going to be even worse whenever the cold comes. And so many people are unemployed that I don't find it to be a very moral thing to think that a cold shelter is something to cut. And then the other thing that I worry about when talking about the Wi-Fi, that's excellent. The fact that you can get the infrastructure for that amount, and it would be $1,000 a month to fund that with ongoing costs for the next 3 years. That's really impressive, an impressive cost. And I think that if we're going to cut anything, we should be cutting the parks. We should be making sure that people who need to work and go to school remotely in their own homes, who have the least access, actually have service within their building, and that they don't have to go to a park and do work. I don't think that's very ethical. So I think those are all my questions for now.
Okay, let me get Councilor Southard.
Thank you. Thank you for all this good work. This is, a lot of effort. I would echo what Councilor Ragu has just said about the drone. I was really puzzled about having that on the list, and would like some justification or some explanation regarding the cold shelter. Of course, it's essential. It's an essential service. We'd love to have it, but I'm not sure that we can accomplish this when they're not. The buildings aren't even for sale, so I don't think that's really feasible. I think right now we should be talking about renting and housing people as needed. And in all, generally, I would favor option 2 with those questions I just asked. And I think that this is going to help our community very much, and I hope that we can follow through with this. Thank you.
All right, let me get Councilor Prithrick, and then we'll come back to Councilor Ragu.
So coming back to the cold shelter thing, I guess to me, it's like, can we accomplish it in a way that we can sustain in the future? And I guess I would ask the question, is there a way, for example, to acquire an ownership stake in a motel that we're not then the sole owner and operator of a cold shelter? Right now, I don't know that we have enough information on how much capacity we need. So, you know, to me, is there a way that somehow we can do that so that rather than pay, you know, can you do like a timeshare on a motel so that we have a commitment to lodging people into the future through an ownership stake? That was just to me as a compromise way, like you could serve the need, but not, I mean, again, I want to serve that population, but owning a building and operating it, managing it outright into the future, I have trouble imagining we have the capacity for that. But if there's a creative way that we can make a capital investment that buys us a share in the future, that to me would be the optimal. As echoing what some of the other people have said, I think we need to put a sniff test to all these things. I mean, I've said we should spend all the money, but it's our tax dollars we're spending. And so I do want to make sure that the things don't appear at all to be tangentially related. So the secondary drone probably looks a little tangential, much as I would love to have the money fund the Gator. I think it seems like a bit of a stretch. So some of the things that you cut, Jessica, I think they were the ones that were tough on the sniff test. To me, then again, it's just a question. Some of the big items are, what do we do about the cold shelter? Maybe it's not $200,000, but we can buy an ownership share for $100,000. And then think about I don't know what the right answer is with Wi-Fi. I understand wanting to serve the most vulnerable, but I think the CARES Act should serve the entirety of the community. And so I think if we can do both of those things, that would be great. But yeah, to just serve one neighborhood without serving a public park that we know the whole community can use, that doesn't make sense to me. I think we can do both. So.
Let me get Edna, and then we'll come back to Jason.
I agree. I think that was a very, very good point that you've made, David, and especially I think that it isn't, I have a neighbor who has many of her grandchildren in her house. She's worried that she doesn't have the internet capacity for all those kids. If the parks had services, all those kids in her house would be served. Now they don't live in the communities that we're talking about, but I think having the parks be accessible for Wi-Fi is very important. And I think it really would serve the entire community. So that's something we should, not cut.
Jason, do you have another question?
Yeah, I had a few things to say, but I believe Glenn was before me, so I'm gonna let him go first.
Switching screens back and forth. Go ahead, Glenn, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to David's initial statement, or the statement he just made. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're about to pass $142,000 to the Family Resource Center for cold shelter rentals. So we already have some of it in place, which means that, we're coming back to actually making a capital investment into a building where we don't have a cellar and we don't have an outlook on that. And we have to have this stuff spent or else it goes back. So the question that I have is, if we earmark this and it fails, how much time are we going to devote before we look into other options to spend that money? So that was my outlook on why it just seems unfeasible to me. Now, at the same time with that, I agree with some of those smaller line items in option 2, like the drone and possibly the Gator, but like you said, the sniff test would solve all of that. The thing about Wi-Fi, in my opinion, is we have to make sure that when we start earmarking this CARES money and it becomes public, that the public feels as though the entire public is being served. So as long as we have the entire public's mind as long as we have the entire public in mind when we're making these purchases, then I don't think we're going to have any problems. But I know that if we devote $500,000 to a 4-month proposition for a small subset of our town, there's going to be some backlash to that. But like David said, if we can find some sort of agreement that doesn't involve us having to care and feed for that building. So if we can do some sort of long-term lease arrangement or something like that, that would be ideal for me. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but at our last meeting, when we were discussing CARES Act funding before this, PVA said that they didn't want this stuff in their building because they would have to deal with extra issues. And I'm not exactly sure if that still stands, but that was my understanding when it was explained the last meeting that we had.
Hey, Jason, Glenn, let me just address your first comment. You had mentioned giving Family Resource Center money for the cold shelter. It's $142,000 on the resolution tonight, but it not only went for that, it goes for emergency financial assistance for housing and utilities, transportation needs, client eviction history, credit repair, childcare, several different things. And maybe Jessica has the breakdown, but I wanted to just clarify that. And then what Jessica shared with us the last time is those 2 locations did not want it if it wasn't going to be more citywide. Is that correct, Jessica?
Yep.
Well, also, they didn't want it broadcast, so a bunch of other people would come into that. And if it's hardwired into the building, that's different.
It certainly is.
Chantel?
Yeah. Sorry, I think it was my turn. Thanks, Doug. You actually said one of the things I was going to address. Most of that money wasn't going towards cold shelter, but that also makes part of the point, right? That would be for serving 4 months of people who need cold shelter. But the truth is that we have people who need shelter all year round. And it costs a lot of money to constantly rent out hotel rooms, motel rooms to try and serve them. This would address that. And also, I feel like we're talking as if the city itself would be purchasing the property, but we wouldn't. We would be handing over money to one of our most respected charities in town that does a lot of good work to carry this on. And I know they have a lot of support from related charities that they work with, and also a lot of the churches and religious groups in town that want to contribute to eradicating systemic poverty. And the Wi-Fi issue was also addressed. Thank you, Doug. That wouldn't be a problem going forward because it wouldn't be a single location that anybody could walk up and use. And I think I had some other points, but I lost it. And there's plenty of people ready to talk. So I'm going to hand it back over.
Let's go back. Chantel, do you still have some?
Yeah, I do. No, I completely agree with what Jason said, because we're acting as if homelessness only exists for the next 4 months. We know that COVID is exacerbating homelessness and the likelihood of people becoming evicted, but we also know that it is an ongoing problem. So I guess the question is this something we only care about for the next 4 months, or is this something we care about ongoing? And I would argue that there's a lot of public support for helping out people who do not have housing. And then also, yeah, exactly what Bill said with PVA, that if the Wi-Fi is hardwired into the building, that should take care of the problem you said before, that the manager of PVA didn't want loitering or people coming onto their property. So I imagine they would have to be invited into the actual apartments, if I'm understanding how that tech works. And then my other question, just thinking between option 1 and option 2, is that for the gift card program, I thought my understanding of the CARES funds is that it could not be retrospectively applied to something that had already been purchased. Am I wrong about that? Because I thought the gift cards were purchased before we were allocated either of the CARES funding.
We're just switching it to a grant.
Okay, so that's cool to do, even though that.
We believe so. I mean, with the information we have now, yes.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Jason, you got something? And then I've got David.
So,
Yeah. Well, sorry, David. I was just going to say that I wanted to point out that one of our major goals that we decided as a council is to address housing and homelessness. And one of the major goals of the Housing Advisory Committee is to address housing and homelessness. This fits right in with that. And as for serving the whole community, I believe in that, but I believe in the idea of the veil of ignorance, right? That if you can make an argument for someone not knowing their background, just simply that they need help, that makes sense, right? Because no matter who they are, if they're in currently a great position, they don't need help at the moment, but anybody could fall into that position. And so it should be, I would argue, morally justifiable that we serve those that are most in need. And I also want to point out that option 2, we would have both Wi-Fi's available, right? Both the park and the communities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that a yes? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yes.
Thanks.
So Wi-Fi's made the cut on both options.
All right, David, and then Bill.
So just for the sake of the conversation, I think we all share the goals. It's the matter of how to get there. So, I mean, I hope that other counselors recognize that. I want a sustainable solution. And if there's a way to do that, I mean, because we're trading off values between this dollar amount and other things we might be able to do. If we can do it, I think that's great. So I always want to put one pitch in for something that's, if we go with option 2, and I don't know if we will, I think enhancing our ability to communicate and reach people virtually is not something we want to cut lightly. I think we've kind of stumbled into the virtual age, but I think that, for example, COVID's going to have, for example, our older folks hesitant to engage in public meetings and things like that into the future. So I would not want to see us prematurely cut our ability to engage people virtually, because I suspect people are going to feel vulnerable in public places. So if we can figure out how to keep our democracy going for all people, I think that that's not a huge investment to make. So I would like to make sure we keep that money in there, because so anyway.
All right, let me get Bill, then we'll get Glenn.
I think this has been a good discussion. It seems to me maybe the way to go at this point would be some version of option 2, and then have some time to investigate the feasibility of cold shelter. We don't know how much it would cost. We don't know if anybody's willing to sell. You know, we don't, maybe what we need is a hefty amount for leasing for them if the people are unwilling to sell. But I think if we start with option 2, investigate that, and then you come back, you say, well, you know, this worked, or no, this didn't work. And then we move from that point. But I would hate to see us go ahead and you know, allocate all these funds and then find out that we could have had that shelter.
Let me see. I'm seeing. I think I've
We
got
have
Jason.
about 10 minutes, and
Okay.
I would love to have a little bit of direction
Okay.
to bring to you next meeting. So
All right, let me get Jason, Glenn, and David, and then I'll see if I can sum everything up and get us some direction.
Yeah, I would love to lend my support behind Bill's comments just then. If we can look into this as an option, and options other than that, like possible co-ownership of some of the motels mentioned, or purchase of housings for transitional housing, that would be great. But I think we need to start there and see what's feasible, because that's what serves those most in need and who will be most affected by COVID itself. And also will have long-lasting benefits going forward. Thanks.
Glenn, we'll get to you, Doug. Hang on.
I just want to clarify something on David's statement. So correct me if I'm wrong, David. Option 2, I'm okay with, but the Zoom communications, which I don't even think is just Zoom, I would call that communications infrastructure, should be taken off of that option 2 list. Like, that's what I believe you were saying, Dave, and I agree with that. Communications currently is tantamount. We need to inform the public of what's going on. So I would not want to see that in the cut pile.
David?
So I agree with Bill. I guess what I would say is if we're fixated on $200,000 to purchase a cold shelter, I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with that. But if we say $200,000 to support homeless and transitional populations, and maybe that goes toward option A, buying the whole thing. But we talked about a tiny home community. Can we partner in the tiny home community for $100,000? You know, like, let's just budget that for housing and see what's the best thing we can do with it in the amount of time we have. But let's have some things in reserve so that if we find out that the deal on whatever falls through, we've got infrastructure we can go with and spend on short order. So yeah, I'm comfortable with the big picture amount. If we're fixated on one solution, then I'm not sure it's 100% it's the right one. But if we can figure out some alternative solutions, then we can come back and talk about it.
Edna, you want to say something real quick?
I want to support what David just said. I think that giving us a more open-ended attitude is or direction is good, because if we say we're definitely going to invest in one kind of thing and then we can't do it because the property isn't available and they're not selling and so on and so on, I think making it a more broad way to look at this is the way to go. And I would definitely support that. And I also support the idea that we must make sure that internet access is available in the parks, especially, and for our community at large. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Do you want to throw something in there, Doug?
Yeah, I just want to throw something out real quickly. We have about $220,000 left from first and second round, and we haven't received the check for the 832. I mean, I don't believe we'll have that before our next meeting, to be quite frank with you. We have some time to make that decision. I might suggest that you come up with $200,000 of spending so we can put something on the agenda, a resolution. And one option might be to move forward with the Wi-Fi, or to come up with some other projects that amount to $200,000. I'd like to keep the ball rolling. I think we do have some agreement on some things. I know, we all feel like we're under the gun, and we are in somewhat. So, if you go with the Wi-Fi, we're a little short, or we go with, let's say, the testing and add some things to it. So I just wanted to offer that to you.
I say we go with the Wi-Fi now. Let's get it because it's needed right now.
Yeah, I think we have a consensus on that. So, okay. And then we'll let Jessica keep exploring the possibility of cold shelter. And we'll see how that goes. I think we have some time to do that. And then we can see where we are by the first meeting in October. We might not even have the check yet anyway. And by then we'll know what we might be able to do with cold shelter. And it looks like if that falls through completely or partially, we still have a fair amount of things we could fall back on. We'll also keep communications on the list so we can keep our virtual communications working. Does that give you enough to go on, Jessica?
It does. That's really what I need. And so I just want to reiterate, just to be very clear, the only reason I put the cold shelter on the cut list was because it's not for sale, and it felt really like I wasn't sure how to do it. Like, the value of a cold shelter means a lot to me. So I wanted to be clear with that. But yes, I will explore. I'm going to call them. I know these people from when I worked at Enjoy Oxford. I'll call them and see what they're open to. And then I'll also, and to Glenn's point, you were right. It is more than Zoom communications. It is technology upgrades to engage our residents, both with the website and Zoom. So I will add that to the yes list and explore that a bit more. And so I'll have something ready in a few weeks. And yeah.
All right.
We have about 5 minutes before city council starts. If anyone wants I don't know if you want to try to squeeze in a break, but.
Yeah. Do you got one more thing, Jason?
Yeah, could I make a quick suggestion? Can we be sure to explore the options of purchasing the infrastructure, but still having a contract that allows us to shop for different internet services? Because that will help us maintain cheap Wi-Fi going forward, potentially. if we're not locked into a single carrier because they provided the infrastructure. I don't know if that's possible, but that's something I think I would love us to explore.
I can ask.
Thanks.
Hey, Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I know that Cincinnati Bell's moving into town. I just got Optics, so it's not just Spectrum the only game anymore. So there should be some competitive bidding that we can get even better pricing and service through this.
All right. Okay, if we've got some direction, do I have a motion to adjourn the work session?
So moved.
I see you move by Mr. Ellerby, second by Mr. Prithridge. All right, we will adjourn the work session and proceed to council. And I don't know about anybody else, but I need to take a bathroom break.
Mayor Smith, we're ready to go when you are.
All right. Then I will call us back to the Oxford City Council meeting of September 15th, 2020. Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll whenever you're ready. You're muted, Marianne.
You're muted, Marianne.
There we go.
Okay, sorry.
That's right.
Mr. Ellerby,
Here.
Mr. Prithridge,
Here.
Ms. Ragu,
Here.
Mr. Snavely,
Here.
Ms. Southard,
Here,
Mr. Bracken.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. All right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second.
seconded.
Second by Counselor Southard. All right, tonight we start public participation with a proclamation for National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas Oxford has always embraced the many cultures and peoples that make our country so diverse, and Hispanic Latino Americans are one of the fastest growing groups in the country. And whereas, as a result of their determination, intelligence, hard work, perseverance, Hispanic Latino Americans have contributed immensely to the growth of our country, helping to shape the character and future of this state. And whereas the cultural, educational, and political influences of Hispanic Latino Americans can be seen and appreciated in all aspects of our life, from farm worker struggles for housing and equal wages to incredible gifted artists, vibrant businesses, music, and community festivals. And whereas the Hispanic Latino American community has a long and important history of commitment to our nation's core values, and the contributions of this community have helped make our country great. During National Hispanic Heritage Month, we celebrate the many achievements of Hispanic Latino Americans and recognize their contributions to our country. And whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the spirit and accomplishments of the Hispanic Latino Americans everywhere. To honor those achievements, the Congress, by Public Law 100-402, as amended, has authorized and requested the President to issue annually a proclamation designating September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month. Now therefore, I, Michael Smith, Mayor of the City of Oxford, do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th, 2020 as National Hispanic Heritage Month in the City of Oxford, and I urge all citizens to join me in celebrating the significant contributions of Hispanic Latino Americans in our country by participating in the activities and events planned for this important occasion. All right. I don't see our guest who is going to make comments, so I will move on. We are going to discussion with the COVID update from the Butler County Health Commissioner. Ms. Green, is she?
Miss Baylor, I've just promoted you to a panelist. If you want to, I think you're unmuted. There you go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, great. Always unsure if you're talking to anyone or not. Thank you for having me this evening. It's good to see all of your faces in my living room. I was asked to say a few things about the COVID outbreak currently in our midst here in Oxford. Good news is that the number of cases at Miami is trending downward, and we are averaging now about 25 cases per day. There I am. To put that into perspective, we were averaging several hundred at the beginning of the outbreak, which started at the end of August. So steady downward trend in cases, not zero yet, but heading in the right direction for sure. In terms of cases in the Oxford area, in the 45056 zip code, we have had only 124 cases total since March. So 124 total in our whole zip code compared to 25 per day among Miami students currently. So that just gives you a little perspective there. The best news is that we've had no hospitalizations and no complications that we know of for any of the students who have contracted COVID. They seem to be getting mild cases and recovering fairly quickly. So there may be people who have been sicker that we are not aware of, but that's what we know at this time. I was asked to comment on testing options in Oxford, and I sent Jessica a chart earlier today that put testing into 4 quadrants, having uninsured and insured people, and symptomatic and asymptomatic people, and what options we have in Oxford. Our biggest need right now is testing for symptomatic people with no health insurance. As you know, those are our most vulnerable people, and they're the people that are most likely to butt up against university students in bars or restaurants or other service fields where the spread of COVID might happen. This is concerning to me. I want those people to have testing available to them should they need it. We've had a number, well, and when I say a number, I'll say 3 that I know of, and perhaps more outbreaks in restaurants and bars in Oxford. And that is a place where I see that this disease could jump from Miami students into the townspeople. So don't want to see it happen there. Bars, restaurants, as well as the farmers market are concerning areas to me. So really want to see that the people who work in those settings have testing available to them. And right now in Oxford, that's not very prevalent. If you have insurance, there are plenty of places to get tested in Oxford. So that's something that I would put forward to you as a suggestion to consider for CARES Act funding. And I heard your work session and you discussed some of that earlier this evening. So thank you for considering that. One thing that will be happening tomorrow to help out with bars and restaurants is that 5 of my staff will be making visits tomorrow at the beginning of the day and into the afternoon. Their goal is to visit every bar and restaurant in town and just look at them with a COVID lens. They won't be checking the temperatures of hamburgers or anything like that, like they usually do. They'll just be looking at COVID interventions, for example, plexiglass in certain places or tables spread out far enough for partitions. And they'll be making suggestions to bar and restaurant owners as to things they might do to decrease the spread of COVID. That's another area where CARES funding might be applicable, and that would be giving reimbursement to small businesses that make improvements internally or externally to their structure to decrease the chance of spreading COVID. So just another thing for your consideration. The last thing that I have to tell you about, and then I'd be happy to take questions if that's appropriate, Jessica, would be consideration of extending the mask order that you've already put in place that is so appreciated by those of us in the health field, and the mask gathering order. Both of those things have been super helpful to us. You could consider extending the mask order to be inside as well as outside, unless you are exercising or walking with a family member or someone you share a home with. There are lots of groups out doing their thing, and they are not social distancing appropriately enough. So the guideline, as you know, is to wear a mask outside when you cannot social distance. And I think that's a really hard thing to gauge and understand how close you are to someone as you're walking down High Street. But I see a lot of people doing this in a way that I think promotes the spread of potentially of COVID-19. So just something for you to consider. I know there are lots of ins and outs and legal things to consider in that. So that's my update. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
All right, I see a hand from Mr. Prithrick and then Mr. Bracken.
So I really want to thank you for joining us. When I requested this be on the agenda item, our trends were very scary. And I'm very encouraged that even with increased testing, it seems like things are turning a corner. But Butler County is still right up there in Ohio. I was concerned we were headed in a direction of a stay-at-home order or something like that. I guess you've listed some of the things that you think are most important. Where do you think the risk is going to be for us? Is it house students in house parties? Do we need to be doing more? I guess, what are the primary pathways, particularly not only among students, but the risks for this to get to the more vulnerable populations in the community? So if we really want to focus on keeping things under control, is it the house parties? Is it porch parties? Is it the workplaces that we really strengthen that? What would you do if you were in our seat?
I think I kind of prioritize those already. I would just reiterate those. The spread among the students is happening inside houses and at house parties, and I think we all kind of see that happening all around us. And because those have been mild infections, they're concerning, but my real concern is about the more vulnerable population. And so the places where I see that spread potentially happening is where we kind of rub up against each other as town and gown, and that is bars, restaurants, and farmers market and other group gatherings. A lot of people are really worried about Kroger. I'm not so worried about Kroger. We need to remember that this disease spreads when people are less than 6 feet apart for more than 15 minutes. So your random walk down the aisle in Kroger is probably not a high risk activity, although I know it makes people nervous. It makes me kind of anxious when it's crowded at Kroger too, but it's an extended period of time when this disease is most apt to jump.
Thank you.
All right. Who did I have next? Jason, and then we'll get Chantel, and then we'll get Edna.
Yes, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Do we expect the numbers to keep going down? Should we expect that? I'm worried, obviously, because we're going into flu season. Spread is more prevalent, and we've invited more students back in town and might even have some more in-person classes. So, I mean, is that how we should be viewing this? As cases are going to go down going forward, or?
Well, people often ask me to look into my crystal ball, and it's not all that great a predictor, but I can give you my gut feeling, and that is that we are nowhere out of the woods yet. We've just invited 5,000 students to come back. We're heading into winter. We're heading into flu season. We don't have a vaccine yet. So if I sound like doom and gloom, my apologies, but it's not a rosy picture right now.
I just want to make sure that was clear, especially because people might not understand 25 new cases a day sounds pretty low, and relative to what we had might be low, but the actual amount of infection at any given time is not 25 people, it's thousands of people. I really appreciate your recommendation. I hope we take that up as council to address, augment the mask order to include what you mentioned. But do you have any recommendations for, not only am I worried about spread in the community, the town and gown connection, but I'm also worried that students might go home to their families and their extended families for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And if that's in the heart of our infection crisis here, that's going to be really bad. Is there anything you see that we can do for that? Do we need to do testing right before students leave to see their families to prevent the nation from being affected by our situation?
That's a really good suggestion. And I hadn't thought about preventing that, but I will definitely mull that over. I do agree with you. That's a risk, and it will probably happen that students do take this disease home to their families. And testing before they go has not been brought up before. So thank you for that. That's a new idea.
All right, let's go to Councilor Ragu, and then we'll get Councilor Southern. You're still muted, Chantel. There you
Thank
go.
you. Yeah, we know that, just the physics of the aerosols and that the way that they spread, that's why the 6 feet or 10 feet recommendation is super important. Good ventilation, being outdoors can be super helpful. So we know that being outside is really a good positive thing to try to reduce the spread. So bars and restaurants, yes, that is pretty obvious whenever their face mask is down, when they're eating or drinking, and they're also being indoors. So I think that anything that we can do to try to make things outside, such as the farmers markets, it's hard when one of those 3 things is outdoors and the other things are all indoors. And we know that being outside is so helpful. I'm just wondering why that specific event, when we're not as concerned about indoor grocery stores, why that is such a priority, just knowing what we know about aerosols.
Yeah, good question. The highest risk things are indoors where there isn't a lot of ventilation. But what I observe at the farmers market is just that there's a lot of close contact. And, part of the reason to go to the farmers market is to get your produce, but the other part of it is to get your socializing in, right? It's cultivating community, and people hang out and chat together, and they're in close proximity. When they pick out their produce, for example, I'm just making that up, but when you pick out your bread or whatever, you stand close together and have conversation and make your selections. So there is a lot more interaction there than there is passing randomly in the Kroger aisles. So that's what brings it a little bit higher onto my list. But you're right, the outdoor part does bring down the risk level a little bit. So all of those things weighed together, it still is an area of some concern for me.
Right. Councillor Southard.
Thank you. I know that you've had many conversations with both the city staff and the university, and that many citizens are very concerned about, action and what we can all do. You suggested extending the mask order inside and outside. Is there anything else that we, city council, should do? Anything else that citizens should do? What are your specific suggestions about what we can actually do? Because everybody feels so terribly helpless and vulnerable. So we really do need could use some guidance here.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had like a whole list of things I could tell you, do this, and we can make it go away. What the science tells us is that there are 3 important things to do, and that's masking, staying apart from each other, and cleaning your hands. And those things are true all the time. They've been true. They will be true. They're not big things that a city council can work on so much. But I do think that the biggest challenge in all of this is a communication challenge, and getting people to buy in to what we have to say about the science of this disease. And that's terrifically hard. And you all know that just from reading the newspaper and seeing what's on Facebook. A variety of opinions exist, and people do what they will do. That is true on campus. Students will do what they will do. So my focus, knowing that that in some respects the horse is out of the barn with the way that young adults behave, the best thing that we can do is protect our vulnerable people. And that would be what I've said earlier on this call, is to continue to look for ways to protect our townspeople. That is where I'm trying to put my energy now. I did have a very good conversation with the Age Friendly Oxford group, and they put forth a fairly extensive document filled with ideas, and I hope some of you have seen it. I would encourage you to hold public forums and hear from the people about what they think is important. I have a particular lens, but other people, Mr. Bracken gave me a new idea just tonight. So listening to our citizens about what they think are important, about areas where they feel insecure or at risk, would be a good thing that City Council could sponsor some of those kind of feedback sessions and get more ideas from other people. As far as specific things, I don't have too many more things to tell you at this time, except that I think our uninsured people need to be able to have tests if they're sick. And helping small businesses to make improvements would be my two main things, I guess.
All right. Back to Councillor Prithridge.
So maybe you can help me with something I've been wrestling with, which is in the spring, we had very little exposure locally, yet we were in total lockdown. Now the chances are 1 in 10 people plus that you in this town have COVID, yet we're open for business, okay? At one level, I think if this were March, we would be in lockdown. This would be a stay-at-home order condition, yet it's not. And in fact, we're going the other way. So to me, the question is, should we be doing that? And it seems like from an epidemiological point of view, we should be doing a stay-at-home order. I'm not sure we're going that way. It seems like we're going the opposite direction. So then the question is, how do you live as a community over the long term with community spread, not just, again, from an epidemiological point of view, but from, again, we've had a lot of messaging that is negative, but we're going to have to figure out how, at least college kids have to figure out how to live a life that is satisfying and fun for a college student without being reckless. So A, how do we message that to people? And B, we've struggled ourselves with the alternatives. Like, do you encourage programming that brings people outdoors and out of their houses and porches? Or do you not do events? Do you shut down all events, or do you do events? Let's say we're going to live with it for the next few months. Should we as a city be venturing into the idea of encouraging people to be doing things? I mean, should we show movies uptown and under a controlled social distance thing? Or should we just not do that stuff and hope people stay at home? That's a just conundrum I'm wrestling with.
So many good thoughts and comments there. I'll try to explain the first question that you had about why aren't we in lockdown right now. And first of all, disclaimer, I don't make those rules. They come from higher up than me. But in March, we went into lockdown to try to prevent a surge on our healthcare system. And we were successful in that. And people forget that. That's where we were headed, was a massive surge on our healthcare system where we would run out of ventilators and run out of ICU beds. That was the prediction. So we were successful in flattening that curve. And then we've tried to have a slow, gradual opening. And the opening doesn't always make sense. One thing it's open and another thing's closed, and seems to be no rhyme or reason. But we are slowly opening and trying to figure out a way that we can live with this disease and still not overwhelm our healthcare system. So in terms of not overwhelming, we've been quite successful, and we are in good shape right now in Southwest Ohio. I'm on a call every Monday with the region of hospitals, public health and long-term care facilities, and we look at hospital capacity and ventilator capacity and ICU capacity, and we're doing very well on that as a region and as a state. So we've been successful in that way, but we do need to open up enough to keep our economy going, right? That's super important, and that's a part of health. So sometimes people think public health, we're just the ruiners, we want to keep everything closed. That's not really the case. We know that a strong economy is good for health. People need to be able to feed their families and buy their medicines and pay their rent. That's all a part of health. So we want the economy to be open, but we want it to be open safely. Hence the reason my sanitarians are coming up to Oxford tomorrow to really help with that. And they're doing a one-day blitz. They'll do everybody in one day and be done, because with 5,000 students coming back, this is the time to do it. And I'll tell you, they're not all that thrilled about coming to Oxford right now, just so you know. With the number of cases up here, my people who don't live in Oxford are kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to go up there and inspect the restaurants. So we're doing it in this little bit of a lull time here so that they feel safe. Mr. Prithridge, that's kind of what you started with, and I wanted to explain that March thing. And then there were a lot of other questions in there, and honestly, I've forgotten them. Can you refresh my memory?
No,
what
it was
the
just
rest
about whether, if we want to encourage alternatives to people partying in their houses, can we do that safely, or should we just ought not to?
Right, gotcha. So there is still an order in place from the director of Ohio Department of Health that says meetings of 10 or more people in person are not supposed to be happening, except for certain exceptions like weddings and funerals and government meetings. You guys are allowed to meet in person now if you so choose to do that, according to the governor. But mass gatherings are still not supposed to be happening. So showing movies, even with social distancing outside, is technically not supposed to be happening still, although a lot of things are. And if you want to do those kinds of things, you are supposed to check with your local health department. And then we will let you know what regulations might apply to let it fly or not fly. And if it's available to be open, then my people will work with you on social distancing and how to do it safely. And we've gained a lot of experience in that and know a lot of tricks and tips for maintaining distancing and stuff at this point. So would encourage you to check in with my folks on anything like that if you wish.
All right, I have one final question. I'm thinking ahead to Halloween. So any thoughts on trick or treat, mass and distance? We can make it happen. I'm open to any suggestions.
So I'm gonna punt on this one and say that the governor has promised us that he will make some sort of declaration about Halloween. Everybody wants it now because everybody's planning. We asked him 2 weeks ago to please weigh in on this, and he's told us, I will. So we're not going to weigh in because we know that he is. And we'll let him make that decision. That's a hard one. That's why I think why a decision hasn't been made yet, because it's something that everybody really likes. Kids really like Halloween. We don't want to be the ruiners, but it is semi-high risk activity.
All right, Commissioner Baylor, we really thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate everything you and your overwhelmed staff is doing, and keep up the good work.
And thanks to all of you. It's really great to have an active city council working along with health. We very much appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Green, I wanted to circle back to, I think we have somebody that wanted to speak to the proclamation, Jackie Rojas Velarde.
Raised her hand, so hold on just a moment,
And I
please.
missed that, so I apologize.
There she is. Jackie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. These are challenging times. It's so great to see your faces. I would have loved to be there with you. Thank you for, anyway, celebrate this special month, the Hispanic Latin American Heritage Month. On behalf of the community, we want to really appreciate all the things that you have done for this celebration for so long. I think it's important at times like these that are so challenging, is still giving people the opportunity to celebrate, even through virtual meetings or any kind of event like that. I want to take this opportunity because I don't know if we will continue to do this in the future. Hopefully we will do. But to thank the city of Oxford, all our local business, Oxford, Enjoy Oxford has been so important for us in the organization of this event. But the contributions of our community members, organizations like NAACP that have supported this event, the League of Women Voters, Oxford Community Arts Center, different departments at Miami University, but most of all, Oxford community Latinos and Hispanics in the US are increasing significantly. As you know, in Ohio, we're about 4% of the increase in population and the youngest one in the whole state. But we're strong. We're trying to, take care of the struggles currently, and we hope that in the future we can keep going, provide contributions to our communities and society. So thank you again. Our Professor Paula Gándara was waiting to say a few words. Some students are watching this event right now. I just wanted to share with you that, and thank you again for everything you do for our community as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will turn to public comments. Anyone wishing to address council about items that are not on the consent agenda or on the regular agenda, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
We have a few, looks like. Okay, let's see. We have Miss Anderson. Go ahead, Miss Anderson.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is Debbie Anderson, and I live at 3903 Harris Road. And I'm speaking tonight on behalf of support for the Oxford Police Department. I want to thank you for serving the Oxford community. And I know this year has been perhaps the most difficult, that you've all put in extra hours and carry extra concerns. But I also believe that you worked to be elected or hired for your positions, believing that you had something to offer the city and that you wanted to serve the community through leadership. So thank you. So these comments will be different than what you hear from others this evening. With all due respect, I want to remind each of you of your calling as a leader. You are the highest local authority in our community, and our community chose you. So I've observed that you don't take your authority lightly. And I believe that while you have individual perspectives, you all want the best for this community. So I appreciate how diligent you are and respectful in hearing public comment. And my concern, though, is that it costs you something to get your position. You bring in investment and expertise, but I encourage you not to abdicate your authority to the demands of a group of unelected individuals. While I'm sure there's many lovely people putting demands on the police department, I believe it's out of order. In order for organizations to adopt significant change, of course, you need a needs assessment. Where is that mentioned? How can you be sure that the need for change is even valid? Is it beneficial to all who are impacted? Is it cost effective? And does it not do damage just for the sake of creating change? I have not seen hard evidence that alternatives to policing are warranted in our city. The police department, who you all want to operate well, is not part of the discussion. Change is always best if it's initiated by those who need to carry it out. Demand change of these already professional, already self-improving police department, in my mind, is dictatorial leadership, which is never good. We will lose fine men and women. So I encourage the Oxford leadership to soberly look at the issue of authority, to guard the resources of finances and manpower. Is a popular idea worth losing or demoralizing a very fine professional police force? Will micromanaging the police force eradicate every evil of every person's heart in the city? Justice and equality are of utmost importance, but there are safeguards in place for rule breakers. And secondly, along with the role of city leadership comes responsibility. I have friends who own businesses in Oxford. I was thankful that the protests in Oxford were not violent. Like you, I love Oxford. Oxford to me is people, and those are people that I love. Some of these people have family businesses and their entire life savings is in that business. So I hope this never happens, but what if there were violent riots in our city? If these businesses were destroyed due to lack of police or orders to stand down, I would be very concerned. I do not know why mayors of cities where there's been violence have not been sued for lack of their duty. So anyway, I am a person of peace. I believe in forgiveness. I respect authority, but I also believe that inadequate policing or rests on the shoulders of those in authority. So anyway, I believe the first priority of leadership is to uphold the safety of its citizens, its businesses and institutions. And managing all the many things that you do and all the wonderful work that you do fall behind the safekeeping of our city. And in closing, I just want to comment what a principal wrote to me. He said, in my time working with Oxford Police Department, I found them incredibly aware of and respectful to the nature of students who are struggling with mental health issues. Our school resource officer was a social worker before becoming an officer. I've never had an interaction with an Oxford Police Department officer where I felt like they didn't yield to our knowledge of the student and their specific needs. Oxford Police Department's support to us over the years has led to a number of students receiving additional help and resources. So anyway, I want to thank you for listening to me. There have been 180 additional petitions turned into you today in support of the Oxford Police Department and their complete funding. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Next, we have Mr. Brandon Humphrey. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. This is Brandon Humphrey. I live at 609 Ogden Court. So as always, I'd like to thank the council for hearing the voices of the community and specifically for considering the proposals made by Black Lives Matter Oxford. So at the beginning of last city council meeting, the chair of the PCRC, Pat Mead, recommended to city council that OPD be given up to 6 months to produce comprehensive data on field contacts, inclusive of pedestrian stops and including the reasons for the stops. So first, I would like some clarification from council as to whether that's something that Chief Jones has been formally asked to comply with. And if it isn't, I ask that that be added as a discussion item on the agenda for the next city council meeting. Second, Mr. Mead mentioned our proposal to remove barriers to reporting by requiring police officers to hand out business cards with instructions for how to file a complaint with the PCRC. And I understand that the PCRC didn't make any formal recommendation about that proposal because some efforts are already being made to remove some barriers to reporting. But I'd like to ask that the business card proposal as written also be added as a discussion item on the agenda for the next city council meeting. I also just wanted to mention really quickly that I'm happy to be representing Black Lives Matter Oxford at our next PCRC meeting, where we will actually talk about potentially creating a task force to assess the needs of the community and address that third proposal that Black Lives Matter made. So that's all I have for tonight, and thank you all for your time.
All right. Thank you.
I'm not seeing anyone else at this time. There's a fair amount of people on, but I believe some of them are for the CARES Act.
Okay. All right. At this point, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve it.
I have a motion by Mr. Snavely, second.
Seconded.
Second by Councilor Southard. Any items to be removed tonight? Not seeing any. At this point, Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, now we'll move on to resolutions. Ms. Eaton, you may read the first resolution whenever you're ready.
Resolution of Oxford City Council authorizing the city manager to develop a purchase agreement for the sale of a portion of city-owned real property located on the west side of Oxford Riley Road in the city of Oxford, known as Western Knolls.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Southard, second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Snavely. All right, I will turn this over to staff. Is Mr. Elliott or Mr. Perry? I don't know who wants to take this. You're muted, Doug.
I can speak to this, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Good evening, council. As Mary Ann stated, the city owns 47 acres on the west side of Oxford Riley Road. And in July, council authorized the city manager to advertise for bids for that property or a portion thereof. We established a minimum of 5 acres for any bid at a minimum price of $23,000 per acre. Staff from several departments worked together to develop specifications for the request for proposals. It included our current land use guidelines, environment and economic objectives, as well as design expectations for the firm that would develop some or all of that land. We also included the document known as the Western Knolls Design Charrette to give potential bidders an idea of what our expectations were for this land. The city opened bids on August 28th, and we received one proposal. This proposal was from the model group representing Episcopal Retirement Services, as well as the Oxford Senior Citizens Incorporated. I want to share a screen with you. So this is the 47 acres in question, south of Brookville Road and on the west side of 732 Oxford Riley. The proposal suggests 2 phases. Phase 1 would be for 7 acres on the northeast area of our property. Let me zoom in, give you a better idea. West of Melissa Drive. So they are proposing 7 acres would be purchased at a price of $25,000 per acre for the development of apartments that would serve the needs of seniors 55 and older, making 60% or less of area median income. The second phase of their proposal would be for 3 acres to the south of their development to be purchased for the use by Oxford Senior Citizens Incorporated, also at $25,000 per acre. This is a sample of what a typical apartment building would look like from this developer. The city did issue one addendum on the RFP, and one of the issues hindering development of this property is limited sanitary sewers to serve the area. On the east side of Oxford Riley, right along Melissa, there's a bottleneck in the existing sewer that limits flow and what could be developed on the west side. So the city staff have proposed a project to remove that bottleneck. We would use city forces to do the project, And this would be completed in the summer of 2021, should council concur. So this proposal does meet the guidelines we set in the RFP. It meets various objectives of the comprehensive plan, specifically objective 4, to expand senior housing options. So what we're asking tonight is your approval for the city manager to develop a property and development agreement with the model group. It is not for the selling of this land at this time. We're asking permission to develop this agreement. And if you authorize us to do that, we'll bring back an ordinance in the future that would allow us to sell the property. And at that time, you would need a 2/3 majority of council for the selling of real property. So I'll be glad to answer questions.
All right, Ms. Green, is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution before council?
Yes. The name Kevin. Go ahead. Oh. Kevin, you have a bad connection.
You're really garbled, Kevin. You kind of sound like Mickey Mouse. Still
No,
garbled.
connection is not working. I can get you the dial-in number. Give me just a minute.
Anything now?
Yes.
There we go. That works.
Yay. Fun with technology. Kevin McKeon, 212 Dana Drive. Wanted to bring up, I guess, two comments as this moves forward. I know countless people have reiterated this is just the concept of drawing up a sales contract and potentially moving forward to sale, but seeing as we have fairly well drawn out plans, it feels like it may have a little more momentum to me than just simply talking about reaching a purchase agreement. So I wanted to go ahead and speak about a couple things. One, I've been bothered by how, especially during the charrette things, that was, you guys nearly violated sunshine laws on that. That just threw me off the deep end because everyone knows better. And it felt like it was done not to include our community in Western Knolls. This was a hot button 20+ years ago. It continues to be a hot button. There's a community member who's maintained an email database of people in southern Western Knolls to keep in communication when this land comes up. So it is of very high importance and interest to everyone in this community. So just wanted to, communication is very important. That was part of the problem 20 years ago, and I could easily see it being a problem now. So I hope that's not the case. And hearing Mike talk about the sewer, I'd like to point out that in previous developments, the previous development agreements, we've required financial participation by the developers when we have to upgrade sewers and sanitation and water supply. So we might consider that for this project as well, so it doesn't further tax our budgets. And that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, there's another one. Hold on just a moment, please. Aaron Abbott, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, cool. So I'll just sort of, I guess, second or reiterate similar thoughts. So I live at 151 Ryan Drive. Yes. And again, I would say the same concern in terms of involvement in the community, at least this part of the neighborhood, and its impact. So, I think a little more transparency as we move forward, or at least maybe more input from some of the people in the neighborhood. A long way to help, you know, have some sort of comfort level with what's going in back there. And the other thing I would say is, as I'm looking at the retirement facility that is or proposing to go in there, I'm just curious, are we looking at their financials? Have we looked at 2018, 2017? Have we looked at their statements to understand whether or not they're in the black or in the red? So one of my concerns is sometimes we see some not-for-profits with good intentions put in facilities and then run out of money over time. And then they're bought up by for-profit chains. And we see maybe a less than stellar quality record at that point. So I just want to make sure whatever we're committing to, we're doing a thorough vetting of the organization that goes in there. So that would be my second concern, because what I'd hate to see is this go up, be put in place, and then, you know, a couple years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, all of a sudden have this company go and not be solvent or sell off components of their real estate to a for-profit chain. There's a vast difference in quality between the two types of long-term care or senior living communities. And so that could be a significant challenge. So that would be one of my concerns. And then the third thing is just as the third phase of this plays out with Oxford seniors moving over there, is hopefully there's some thought in terms of what we do with the old space that they vacate. Now, when you look at where long-term care trends are going right now and the need for maybe not people that are currently in their 80s and 90s, but the people in their 40s and 50s, it's in their homes, it's in the community. It's less about in the senior center or in the senior living, right? 55 and over. Most people in their 40s and 50s really don't want to be in 55 and over, right? There's a sort of an issue from an ageism standpoint here. But the opportunity to at least get a bedrock of services, if we move the senior center, can we look to have the adult day, which is run by the senior center as well, move into that building that is vacated, right? So if we're looking at making some of these moves for a bigger picture of helping aging adults, that should be part of this that's in play. We need to get that adult day service out of the basement of the church and into a place where it can actually be expanded. So if we're going to shift some of these pieces around, I just want to, I'm hoping, or at least encouraging folks to be thinking about this holistically, and also think about it from a sustainability standpoint, because we do know that there are clear issues with some facilities that aren't able to stay solvent, and then they end up with large chains, and that just turns out to be a disaster for the community and for the folks living there as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Elliott, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I'm going to try to address Kevin and Aaron, some of their comments. I'm not sure if I can remember them all. First off, the charrette, you know, I apologize to both Kevin and Aaron if they felt left out in the process. That certainly wasn't our intent. You know, it was an initiative of our community development director. You know, I thought it was a good idea, and this just generated some ideas for future development. So probably should have been more inclusive on that. But in regards to the last thing that Mr. Abbott mentioned, we own the building where the senior center is located. So that will be up to City Council to decide if indeed the senior center purchases land from the city and develops a new senior center. It'll be up to the city to decide what they want to do. In regards to the comments about the financial stability of this company, obviously we've got more information that we're going to glean from them. They did provide some financial data. What they're planning to do is apply for some low-income housing tax credits to make this feasible. And they do have experience with many other projects. So this is basically the first step in a very long process, because as City Council knows, if they do authorize us to move forward to develop a purchase agreement, and we do end up selling the land with a 3/5 vote of city council, then they must go through our planning process. The first step would be they need to subdivide the parcel. It's 47 acres. It's all one parcel. So they'll have the expense of coming forward with a subdivision proposal. Then they'll have to go through the planning process of a PUD. So that will go to the planning commission, and then a recommendation will come to city council. So there's a lot of steps to go through, and there's plenty of opportunity for public participation. But we've owned this land for 12 years. We've had a lot of folks talk to us over that 12 years, but nothing ever developed. And the reason why I think nothing developed is because we had a very high expectation of what we wanted to sell the land for. So we brought a recommendation into council to sell it for $23,000 an acre, with the idea that you must buy at least 5 acres, because I've had several people say, I'd like to buy an acre and build a house there. Well, you have to have the infrastructure in place. So, quite frankly, I'm looking forward to this project because I think it is something that the community needs. It is for seniors with meeting the low and moderate income, and they do a really nice job. But this could fall through at any step of the way. I mean, there's a lot of steps to go forward to. So, hopefully I've addressed all of Kevin and Aaron's questions. And like I said, there's a lot of steps that need to take place before this comes to fruition.
All right. Mrs. Green, is there anybody else who'd like to address this resolution?
Yes, I see a first name of Shauna. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Shauna Tefelsky. I live at 2114 Dana Drive. I just want to encourage, I want to backtrack and say that I feel the same as Kevin. Never knew about the Shariat meetings and such. And I think that the neighborhood has just, and it is a really hot topic for us, especially for those who live, they butt up to that property. We're very concerned with what goes in there. I, for one, want the property developed. I want to see some quality items going in, but we are concerned about our children. What if there's going to be any buffer, if the walking trail is going to be that buffer. We're very concerned with that area and for the safety and security of our families and our children. So I would encourage you to involve the community members who, not all, but at least some who live in that neighborhood who have great concerns about this. So the communication aspect, the transparency that Kevin said is all true. So I appreciate all of your comments, Doug, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this progresses. But for the future of the other parcels, we would just like to be included so that we are collaborating and moving forward to see what is best for not only the city of Oxford, but the community, because as Kevin said, this is a hot button for some of us.
All right. Thank you very much.
I do not see any other hands at this time.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to council discussion. I see Councilor Snavely's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of comments. One is to the people who live in that area, is that there were some people in the charrette. From the neighborhood. One of the good things about the charrette is that it tried to take a holistic view. And I would also assure the people in the neighborhood that a number of us made it clear that we wanted to do to protect the integrity of that neighborhood, and that there be some sort of buffer, and for example, no big apartment buildings right backed up to those R1 lots. So this particular development, as it's been drawn out, is actually very similar to one of the, at least one of the I think more than one of the proposals at the Charrette. I think it makes sense. I would not be in favor of a cul-de-sac. I think everything that everybody at the Charrette talked about was connectivity. And so I hope that's not a permanent cul-de-sac. Otherwise, I think that it fits pretty well. It is connected to Melissa. So I think it's a good plan overall. Good start. And I think that once it's there, then other developers and residential developers will begin to see that there's a place for them.
All right, Councilor Berthurch.
So yeah, I want to say that I'm really excited. We're at this point that we have a piece of property that has been sitting vacant for too long, and I'm so happy that A, we did some community planning to come up with a vision, and that B, people are responding to it. And so I think that the community development director, the Charrette process was open for invitation. I mean, it was open to people, but he could only accommodate so much. And I felt like we had a fairly representative group of all of the community, because we need to respond to the neighborhood, but also this needs to serve all of Oxford. And I think we can do both. My suggestion is only, and I think this particular developer hits on a lot of the goals we have in the community for housing. So I'm really excited that of all kind of things coming in, this is it. Just to be clear, all we're agreeing on right now is for the city to enter into that process of developing a development agreement. So any subdivisions, cul-de-sacs, I'm not endorsing anything. I'm just endorsing the fact that you move forward, and there will be multiple more steps ahead on this. But I would say this, that I do hope it's transparent. I think that sometimes a development agreement can be presented as a like fait accompli, like this was signed by everybody, you're all gonna agree to this, right? Like I've been on the planning commission where the development agreement is presented like you're gonna vote for this, right? I hope we don't go that way with this. And so, for example, I hope we use the planning commission and public hearing to, for example, do the kind of concept review conversation that engages the public all the way along. And this is not to give an extra voice to any neighborhood over another, but I think that we should err on the side of transparency in the use of the planning commission. Two reasons. One is I think even though we have this great charrette, it's still full of like 5 different alternatives. I would love the planning commission to try to resolve some of those differences so the community can really see what the long range vision is that guides this, and that those details about cul-de-sacs or whatever are worked out very transparently through the planning commission and not presented to it. But I trust that can be done, and I think this will benefit everybody. So thank you.
All right, Councilor Southern.
Yeah, as we've said, I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, but I do want to say that, again, that this does meet the needs that have been identified for more fairly low-income senior housing. So this is a very good thing. It's 50 units, and what's been presented is not enormous, since it's 47 acres, and this is just a small section of that. But already there are many concerns that I've heard from neighbors about the green spaces, for example. People are concerned that there be enough green spaces and that their views not be damaged. And I know, I'm confident that the Planning Commission will take that into account. And after all, we have just passed some major tree ordinances that will apply to this development should it happen, should this all be signed. It is, coming up, one thing after another is going to happen, right? It's going to be a long process, and this is just the first step. But I know that all those things are going to be taken into account. The green spaces, the preservation of trees, the safety and security of everybody, the connectivity, the 2 cul-de-sacs that exist are I think it appears to me fairly easily linked. That's not too difficult an issue. And I feel confident that this is a good thing. It's better than having a vacant lot there, one that's been a burden to the city, one that where for instance, the deer population in that area is so large that we often see deer crossing 732 Chestnut also, and yards have large groups of deer coming into the neighborhoods, which is also not good. So this may be having this developed is going to be a good thing, and I hope that everybody will see why it is good.
All right. Well, if we've got no further discussion, I will ask Ms. Zeet to call the roll.
Ms. Ragu?
Yes.
Mr. Snavely?
Yes.
Ms. Southard?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby?
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes, that resolution is adopted. All right. All right, we'll move on to our second resolution. Ms. Eaton, you may read that whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with IPS Group Incorporated for the purchase of 4 pay station multi-space smart meters and specified associated equipment, software, and installation at National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance contract pricing at a cost not to exceed $29,110.20.
Move adoption.
Second? Second by Mr. Prithrick. All right. Staff, I don't know who's taking this one.
Well, let me, I believe Lieutenant Fenning is taking that. Is that correct? Or is it Jeff?
No, she's managing this project. She's more than welcome to go, or I can introduce it and let her answer any questions, however you want to move forward.
Well, that's up to you two. Take it away.
I'm happy to help. Chief didn't really introduce how I was supposed to deliver this. We currently have had a trial with 2 IPS, what I'll just call kiosks or pay stations at lot 52. We are happy with that. So we would like to purchase those, but we would also like to extend the purchase of 2 more to the parking garage. Those are aging older meters. There are 56 spaces in the parking garage, and we feel that that would be advantageous to not only the city, but to the public. This is encouraging the public to use more technology, which they demand. It's a benefit to both the public and the city.
All right.
I'm happy to answer any questions. It's exciting parking stuff.
Okay, let me go back to Mrs. Green. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution before council?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, then let's turn it over to council discussion. And I see Councilor Ragu's hand up.
I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer because I remember as the chief there whenever we talked about what's the name of the cameras that go underneath the car and then they monitor for they're recording the license plates. What's that called?
The abbreviation is LPR, license plate reader.
Right. So I guess, oh, sorry.
That's
so
totally
I think
separate than this. Yeah.
Right. Whenever we talked about that, I think it was like a year and a half ago or so, I remember asking before we appropriated the money, well, what if we move towards using exactly what we're talking about right now, using the automated and using an app on your phone? And that wouldn't the LPR be kind of redundant usage of money? So I know that we're not going to be having these kiosks everywhere, but it does in retrospect kind of like gets at me a little bit because I feel like that was a little bit of a redundant use of funds that maybe we could have been investing in technology that was a little bit more advanced so that we didn't have to spend it on LPR. So it's just something that, I'm wondering what is the usage of LPR now and where will it be in the future now that we're moving more towards this type of technology?
If you're asking me to have prepared
I might be able to hop in on that a little bit on the technology side. So it's not necessarily redundant technology, it's a complementary technology. These software solutions integrate with one another. So while we will have pay stations not only in lot 52 and in the parking garage, people will be able to use phone apps where they can just log into their phone and they can pay the meter through their phone app. What will happen is the parking attendants can then drive the ALPR vehicle through a lot, and they'll be able to tell who has paid for a station or paid for a parking space without actually going to that pay station, printing out a report, retrieving a report, or doing something along those lines. But it'll also integrate with that app technology so they can see that when a space has been rented or a vehicle has been rented, or a space has been rented by the vehicle, that'll alert them in their car that no ticket is necessary, that the space has been rented. So they're complementary, they're not redundant, they do work with one another. So that may be a little bit not explained well in the past, but those two should complement one another.
Okay, yeah, that's great, because I think the explanation I got before when we were talking about LPR was that we weren't ready to move towards the kiosk. So if I didn't understand how they were complementary. So I'm glad that we're not wasting budgetary funds in that way.
And Councilor Ragu, I'm sorry, because I wasn't sure where you're going with that. So I wasn't sure what kind of answer you were looking for. So thank you, Lieutenant Robinson.
It's definitely a multi-phased project, going to be multi-year, and you have to buy a lot of this technology kind of in phases. And I think the discussion that happened last year, especially during the capital process for last year's purchases, were to look at things that we could buy ahead of time that we could use at the instant, such as the ALPR technology, before we go and buy the smart meters, before we go and buy the kiosks, because they've been able to use those ALPRs in the field before this trial began in January. So that's a technology we've had, we've been able to use it, and now we're just adding more complementary technology.
Let me go to Councilor Prithridge.
So I just wanted to relay, as I did by email, that the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board met earlier in the week, and it was really great to learn about the kind of big picture strategy that the OPD has for parking. And to be honest, to take us out of the late 20th century into the 21st century, and with the smart meter technology. And they're different. We have different needs in different places. And they have different technologies that can serve those. So, we've invested in a pilot of the smart meters on High Street, but in some of those lower turnover locations, like Lot 52 or the garage, then this is the perfect technology. It's much more cost effective to operate. So I think that this really fits with that. I think they have a scheme of where they want to go with this, and the board has been working with them, and we were impressed by the vision of where they want to go. And just to answer Councilor Ragu's, yeah, the ALPR technology serves a variety of purposes. I mean, one of the purposes it serves is, for example, seeing who's expired on a meter, and also, for example, it helps you spot the scofflaws, the people who haven't paid their parking tickets. Miami basically has 100% ALPR. They've gotten rid of most of their meters, but they're a different situation. We have a lot of visitors coming and going, and I think we need physical meters in our uptown, whether they're like right at your parking spot or that you walk in a lot. So visitors who aren't part of an app, and some of our older folks who maybe don't like the technology. So yeah, I think I'm glad that we're still moving forward with smarter technology on the parking. So thank you.
All right. Mr. Councilor Snavely.
I'm actually really excited about this. Y'all are doing a great job. And I think that it works in a number of cities across the country. Every time I travel abroad, I see these kind of kiosks, and they work well. So I'm a fan. One question I had is, does moving to the kiosk change the cost per hour to park in the garage?
You were garbled a little bit, but I think I heard your question. Does changing the to the kiosks in the garage change the cost in the garage? Yes, it would be changing it to $1 an hour per the fee ordinance.
What is it now?
I think
thought
it's
it was
already in our fee ordinance. If we had moved to these, we anticipated this, I believe. So when we talked about this project last year, we wanted to do a trial period with the kiosks and the meters. And of course, all of a sudden, the students were gone. So it really messed up our experiment. And the company has graciously allowed us to extend that experiment. But we're satisfied with the kiosks. So we're moving forward with that part. But I'll check to make sure. But I believe we had anticipated updating technology and included that in the fee ordinance. But I'll make sure.
Okay, my only concern is that we not make the parking so high that people avoid those meters, and then we have an empty parking garage. So I just want us to keep that in mind. I noticed that when we did have the smart meters on High Street, it seemed to me, and I did not do a real study of it, but just observation was that the side streets were filling up a long time before those on High Street. And so here are all these great parking spaces on High Street that nobody wanted to park in. So I do think we should be strategic about that so that people want to use the parking garage.
Agreed. The anticipation is that there would be smart meters all along High Street, and therefore all of High Street would be $1 an hour.
Yeah.
If the fee ordinance were to remain at $1 an hour.
Yeah, so that was passed last year when you adopted the fee ordinance. It basically says smart meter and pay station rate up to $1 per hour. So obviously we're going to be discussing that again soon anyway.
One of the factors in that is that $1 an hour helps the city keep our costs at a minimum, because it does cost us with transaction fees. But we can look into that further.
Yeah, I think that the discussion of the fees can come later. I just think going from on the side streets, at least from $0.25 an hour to $1 an hour would be a pretty big jump.
Understood.
All right, Councilor Southern.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask how flexible the installation of the smart meters is. I mean, if we find that it's not working in the parking garage, can you move the smart meter somewhere else? I mean, once it's installed, is it possible to move it? And do we own these, or are we renting these? What's the situation?
We'll own the kiosks, and there'll be 4 of them. 2 in lot 52 and 2 in the parking garage. We're not moving forward with the smart meters right now. That's not part of this proposal.
So those smart meters could not be moved in the future?
Kiosk.
These kiosks could not be moved in the future?
Yeah, we could move them, but I'm not sure where we would move them.
I'm just asking about flexibility, not particularly about any specific, just whether those things are movable, whether they're flexible, whether you can change the rates. I guess you can change the rate anytime you.
They're programmable, but also I think the important thing is, like, yes, you have to consider that they have to be hooked up to electric, and then they'll have a concrete pad. So there's some expense with installing them. However, if we realize that they're in a terrible spot, that everybody hates where they're at, that nobody wants to walk, we predicted poorly, let's just say, that nobody wants to walk where we place them, and that the city residents demand that, they have come to you and they say, we want the kiosks over there instead. We can move it.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no further questions, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Snavely?
Yes.
Ms. Southard?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That resolution is adopted. We'll move on to our third resolution of the evening. Ms. Eaton, you may read that whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the donation of $42,000 to Talawanda Oxford Pantry and Social Services as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds to assist with the purchase of a mobile food pantry to serve those in need within the Talawanda School District.
Move adoption.
Adoption, Mr. Snavely, second.
Seconded.
Second by Counselor Southern. All right. Turn this over to staff.
Good evening. So this is an extension, the next step of our discussion that we had at our last meeting, where we narrowed down the basic needs and educational supports and public health that we thought you guys had talked about favorably. So I have invited Ann Fuhr here to speak about this. If you don't mind, I'll let her go ahead and answer any questions you may have. Is that okay? Ms. Fuhr, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening, and I've sat in on the work session and on the meeting so far. I've been pleased to hear a conversation about the importance of looking at the values that are underlying the decisions you make about these CARES Act funds. Particularly, I've been pleased to hear a conversation about protecting the most vulnerable members of the community and supporting agencies who are responding to the consequences of the COVID pandemic, so as not to be overwhelmed, the importance of supporting the agencies that are responding to those consequences. The pandemic has provided a new normal for TOPS. Since the end of March, we have been delivering to all of our customers rather than having them follow the same protocol that we had for the first 13 years of our existence, whereby people would come into the pantry to shop as if in a grocery store for free. We have delivered to 334 unique families since March 1st, and continue to deliver 3 times a week, anywhere from 12 to 28 households a day. That delivery system has worked well, in large part because of the number of volunteers who have stepped up to help us do that. And it has responded to the needs of our customers to be safe, to feel safe, to stay quarantined, to promote social distancing. It's also responded to the increased economic demands on our customers, so that they don't have to travel to the pantry to shop. That system has been operating, I think, pretty smoothly since the end of March, but it is a less than optimal system. It relies on volunteers and the use of their vehicles, and it also has limited the amount of choice that our customers can have. It's just too labor intensive to give people the same level of choice. We can't do a click list the way that Kroger does. So although we've had a system that's worked smoothly, it's less than optimal and I don't think sustainable. And I'm thrilled that we now have hopefully an opportunity to take advantage of these CARES Act funds to allow us to move in a new creative direction with serving our customers in the future. And not only serving our customers, but serving people who are unserved. We know that there are lots of families who could benefit from our food security program, but haven't been served in the past or aren't being served now. Since March 1st, 20% of the families we served are new families who have come to us since that time because of the demands of the pandemic. Just to give you a sense of the importance of moving to a mobile food pantry, which is I'll get to next. Talawanda being the largest school district geographically in the state, I prepare these delivery lists 3 times a week, and I can tell you that very predictably, about 35% of our customers live in the townships, both northeast and south from the pantry. About 35% live either in Parkview Arms or in the mobile home park in Oxford. And then the other 25 to 30% live throughout Oxford. So the proposal that I've offered for a mobile food pantry would go directly to about 70 to 75% of our customers in the locations where they live. Mobile food pantries have become increasingly popular among Feeding America food pantries. In my proposal, I gave reference to one in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and invite you to take a look at that. What we are proposing, and it's a little bit awkward for me to talk about it exactly because although right now we would be very pleased with $42,000, that would allow us to buy a used food truck. At Jessica's suggestion, I also put in a proposal for the 3rd round funds to increase the total ask to $95,000, which would allow us to purchase a new truck. And the person who's really been leading, taking a look at what's available is one of our board members, Dave Rosenthal, who's a emeritus professor from the Farmer School of Business and Marketing. And he's been talking with Premier Custom Concepts Incorporated in Cincinnati. And they've described the kind of new refrigerated, shelved, totally equipped food truck that would be available with $95,000. So that's really what I'm asking for. But I know that, from the work session, I know that you're not looking yet at round 3 monies. But I would just speak to the importance of the proposal and certainly either for a new or used food truck. What we would do would be mirroring what the Talawanda School District and the St. Mary Backpack Program are already doing with their food delivery programs, going to 6 locations every 2 weeks. And it's an option that we've talked about on the TOPS board for a while now, knowing that for the reasons I mentioned that are COVID related, but just in general characterize our customers to the extent that we can go to where most of our customers are, we will better serve them. We'll still maintain the location that we have, and we are thrilled with our new location, co-locating with the Family Resource Center. It's been a wonderful collaboration. We've already worked together to serve a number of families who are served by both agencies. So that has been a good move for us, and we fully intend to reopen for shopping in that location. But I think that if we were awarded these funds, it would really move us for the reasons I've mentioned to a sustainable system. So I appreciate your consideration.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Green, is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution? Any additional?
I don't see any hands. Thank you.
All right, I'll turn it over to council for discussion. I think we're all in. I see Ms. Ragu's hand.
I'll just make this brief. Thanks so much, Anne. I think that's awesome to have a mobile way to make sure that, especially as things might get worse with COVID, that you can bring food towards them so they don't have to leave their home. I am, and we don't have to really go into this much further, but whenever I was in the past looking for the cost of a new food truck, I saw even finding a really fancy customized one for 60,000. So I'm kind of curious about why 95,000. It just, I don't know. I love the idea of like using this like used food truck. So it's awesome. And I hope we vote for it. I'm just a little taken aback by the 95,000, but again, that's to talk about at a later date.
Oh, am I still here?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I certainly can follow up with Dave Rosenthal. He's taken the lead on this and identified a particular provider in Cincinnati who would work with us to help plan the customized nature of the truck. But I can certainly follow up with him about that and give him that response.
All right, that'd be great. All right, if there is no more council discussion, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Southard?
Yes.
Mr. Bracken?
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby?
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge?
Yes.
Ms. Ragu?
Yes.
Mr. Snavely?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. That resolution is adopted. We'll move on to our fourth resolution. Thank you for coming. We'll move on to our fourth resolution. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the donation of $142,000 to the Family Resource Center as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds, which shall be used for emergency financial assistance for housing and utilities, cold shelters, transportation needs, client eviction history and credit repair, child care, and education support services for those in need within the Oxford-Talawanda School District community.
Move adopted by Mr. Snavely, second. Second by Mr. Pritchard. All right. Again, I'll turn this over to staff.
Okay, again, this is in relation to the CARES Act funding, and this is for the Family Resource Center under the areas of basic needs and educational assistance. And I've asked Mr. Brad Hoblitzel to share just a few words about his proposal. Go ahead, Brad.
Sure. First of all, thank you. I appreciate everything that every single one of you do for our city, for our community, for the people. We are very thankful at the Family Resource Center to be a part of what the city of Oxford is doing for our community with the CARES Act. So I appreciate the foresight of our city government and of council in those areas. The 5 areas that were aforementioned: emergency financial assistance, which is rental assistance, utility assistance, document assistance for those in need, for those who have been affected. The economic shutdown, the COVID pandemic, $30,000 for the cold shelter, which one of our ideas is to rent a block of rooms at one of the local hotels that we could use. And, you know, if with clearance here, start to negotiate what that would be to at least from the beginning of December to the end of February, have a space where we can have homeless in our community, have shelter during that time. Transportation for one, auto repair. So many members of our community and of our clients, low-income members of our community, they rely on their automobiles for education purposes, for employment purposes. And it's not something that we've typically in the past have been able to offer at the Family Resource Center as support, but also helping folks with their auto repair, but also our own transportation and getting our clients to possibly meet a job in family services or social security office, or being able to transport to shelters, and various things. We've also started thinking about different things that we could work in the community with transportation. We have found in this community that evictions, but many members in our community have evictions on their records, and that prevents them from getting housing in our community. So we wanted to work with clients to repair their eviction history, so that they could get those wiped and they could go and rent and have apartments or homes in our community. And the last being childcare needs, education resources. You know, obviously with this semester, you know, with at-home schooling and remote learning for the Talawanda School District, there's all kinds of needs with childcare, education resources, and we want to come alongside the Talawanda School District, help support them. Even had some preliminary meetings with our school social workers and success liaison with the high school and middle school about how we could operate in this manner. We're very excited about these things. We think all of these programs can have a dramatic effect on the lives of many folks in our community, and putting them in a healthier state, a healthier position, and weather this storm that we're in. So I'll yield right there. I thank you guys. I thank you all so much for your consideration and just for your including us in the agencies and the forethought that goes into that. So thank you all, and I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Ms. Green, is there anyone else who would like to address this resolution before council?
I do not see anyone else. Thank you.
All right. Council discussion. I see Councilor Agu's hand first, and then Mr. Perthurch.
Thanks, Brad, for being here and for everything that you're doing. And I think that, I mean, this is basically what the CARES money is meant for, you know, to go directly towards helping people. And I guess the question I have for you, with the eviction moratorium that is nationwide in effect as of September 4th until December 31st of this year, could any of this funding be used to help with legal assistance to help protect people against landlords that might be harassing them or trying to get them to evict? Would that fall under any of these classifications that you're asking it for? Or maybe whenever we talk about the next rounds, we can discuss, if it doesn't, how that can go towards legal aid towards helping people.
Yes, we would be open to that use for that. Now, with the moratorium that's going on right now, there's a lot of pre-work that folks have to do to get clearance for that. And I know there's court battles right now going all across this country, and there's a lot of confusion and with this moratorium. So people are still, even though there's a moratorium, people are still being evicted. In our community, we know that before this, we were dealing with evictions. But that's also, you know, we want to use this to keep people on pace and keep people, you know, not falling behind. We've had several cases in our community, or, you know, that we've dealt with in the past month where many people with rent are thousands of dollars behind, you know, haven't not paid since March or April or a few months, and how that collects. So I'd be happy to look into helping with the legal fight of that, because that's part of the advocacy that we represent at the FRC.
All right, Mr. Perthurch.
So I just want to take a minute. We've got a number of these. So I'm just going to say this once, that I want to express thanks to all of these partners and gratitude that we have such good community partners, that we can really feel the confidence that this money will go to a good purpose. So I want to thank the leadership, both including the directors and the board, the great boards behind the Family Resource Center, behind TOPS, Talawanda School District is a great partner. The Oxford Community Arts Center is a great partner. Butler Behavioral Health, Oxford Seniors. These are all great partners and who work with each other and work with us. So I appreciate the expressions of gratitude. This is taxpayer dollars from everyone in the United States, and we're just a pass through. And I'm happy that we can act in that role. And so thank you in advance for the work it will take to use these dollars. I don't take for granted that we have such great partners and organizations in a community as small as we are. So thank you to you all. Brad, starting with you, but everybody else.
Thank you.
Councilor Southard.
Thank you. May I also follow up on Councilor Pritchard's generalized thank you to all the directors and boards, but also to all the volunteers who are doing this work and making it possible to sustain our community. And this COVID crisis, we're always talking about the most vulnerable, but none of us know which of us are going to be the most vulnerable. This disease could make anyone, any neighbor of ours, among those who need help. So this is really for everybody. And I'm glad we can have this money available, this taxpayer money available to help our community, to help those who are most vulnerable now and anybody who will be vulnerable in the future.
All right. If there is no further council discussion, Ms. Eaton, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Regu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That resolution is adopted. Okay, we're thinking in the interest of time that we do have directors here from all the organizations we're awarding CARES Act funding to, that perhaps they only answer questions during council discussion if we have any, if that would be okay with everybody. All right. Let's move on to our fifth resolution. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the donation of $16,000 to the Talawanda School District as a subrecipient of federal CARES Act funds, which shall be used for technology to allow for remote schooling.
Motion to adopt.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Prithridge, second by Mrs. Southard. All right. We'll go to staff.
This is under the category of educational support, and it will be for mobile hotspots and extra laptops for remote learning. And Treasurer Shauna Tafowski is online if you need her. But we just talked about you guys would go questions only.
Okay.
I'm gonna say you guys just stopped me from my whole little spiel here, but I do appreciate time and you want to get off and you want to go to bed, read a good book. But I do, before you guys discuss anything, I do really appreciate on behalf of Talawanda, you considering this money for us. After listening to the other two, I feel a little like I'm being greedy on behalf of Talawanda, where it could go to a greater good for the food pantry and such. So I really do appreciate you guys considering this money towards Talawanda. We are getting our own CARES Act money. So this support would go a long way for helping us, spread that money as well. So fire away with your questions.
All right. Jessica, is there anyone else from the public who would like to address this resolution?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Right. Council discussion.
Call the question.
All right. Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Regu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. And that resolution is adopted. We will move on to our sixth resolution. Ms. Eaton, you may read that whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the donation of $14,017 to the Oxford Community Arts Center as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds, which shall be used to provide free tuition for virtual music and art lessons and the live stream equipment to host them.
All right, motion to adopt. Moved by Mr. Prithridge, second.
Seconded.
By Counselor Southard. All right. Ms. Green?
Nothing further, but if needed, Miss Carolyn Croswell is available to answer questions.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution before council?
Yeah.
Hold on, I need to ask the
No
public.
one from the public. Thank you.
All right, now we'll go on to council discussion. Counselor
Well,
Southard?
there's a discrepancy in the resolution. It says a donation of $20,000 and then it's got $14,017 in parentheses. So
It's 14,017.
So you might want to.
I've corrected that, Ms. Southard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, if there are no further questions or discussion, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Prithridge.
Yes.
Ms. Ragu.
Yes.
Mr. Snavely.
Yes.
Ms. Southard.
Yes.
Mr. Bracken.
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That resolution is adopted. We'll move on to our 7th resolution. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
A resolution authorizing the donation of $20,000 to Butler Behavioral Health Services as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds, which shall be used to provide expanded mental health counseling to 100 people within the Oxford community.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second by Ms. Southard. Ms. Green, anything to add?
Nothing further to add, and I have Mr. Randy Ullman available to answer questions if needed.
All right.
He does have a hand raised if.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution before council?
Only Mr. Ullman.
All right.
Go ahead, Randy, if you'd like.
Just, I'll be brief. As it was read, it would provide up to mental health care for up to 100 people in our community. And additionally, 1 in 5 individuals experience mental health concerns. And our target would be business owners, Talawanda educators and staff, and other essential community workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further council questions or discussion? I see, okay, first hand from Mr. Prithridge.
So just real briefly, I mean, I think that there are a lot of ways in which pandemic hurts people. And we've talked about some real extreme vulnerability, but I think that mental health issues, the need for connection via culture and our last agenda item are important. And I'm really glad that we are helping people get through a difficult time, which I think everybody struggles in their own way. So I hope people avail themselves of these important services.
All right, Councilor Ragu.
So would the people that would be seeking out the 100 people for this, is it all business owners and educators, or you're just saying that would be like part of the demographic?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That would be the target audience, would be business owners, essential staff, those that on a regular basis, employees that are really struggling with the changes that we've all had to make. So as an example, an educator, moving to remote learning, a business owner, and a lot of the stress they have financially. So those would be target audiences.
So needs-based as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further council discussion or questions? All right. Oh, Mr. Bracken?
Yeah, I was just going to concur. The more needs-based this can be and more open to anybody who needs it at this time, the better. That's all.
All right, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Ragu.
Yes.
Mr. Snavely.
Yes.
Ms. Southard.
Yes.
Mr. Bracken.
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby.
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That resolution is adopted. We will move on to our 8th resolution of the night. Ms. Eaton, you may read that whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the donation of $46,500 to Oxford seniors as a subrecipient of Federal CARES Act funds, which shall be used for public health and technology upgrades within the senior center and transportation for seniors within the Oxford community.
Move adoption.
Second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Counselor Southard. Anything to add, Ms. Green?
We do have Mr. Schnabel online to answer questions, and he does have his hand raised.
All right. Let me see. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address this resolution?
I do not see anyone else.
All right, then Steve, if you'd like to say something.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I have found that, first of all, the $46,500, some of which is being invested in the building, which you've already noted that you own, that we utilize. But we've also found that in moving forward from the time we submitted that information, prices from our estimates have increased. So although I had submitted information to Ms. Green late last week about opportunities that could be helpful to us, as she indicated, those didn't get considered, unfortunately, in the 3rd round funding. So I would ask that there be some further consideration of some of those items as you move forward, because we must move forward under state regulations that are now required for senior centers and adult day services to reopen. Those just came out to us last week, and they are very onerous in many, many ways. I've also taken the position working with Jennifer Baylor to delay opening from September 21st, which the governor has allowed, to no earlier than October 5th, based on the red level of Butler County and considering the population, which is seniors are the very last population that the state is allowing these community congregate settings to reopen. And thus the onerous rules. So my sense is that the state is doing so just so they're not looking ageist. But on the other hand, for us to reopen will take tremendous work, extra expense, including testing our employees every other week after having done a baseline before we open. Thank you.
All right. Any council questions or discussion? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right. That resolution is adopted. We will move on to our 9th resolution of the night. Ms. Eaton, you may read that whenever you're ready.
Resolution authorizing the expenditure of $26,600 of Federal CARES Act funds, which shall be used for public health upgrades within the city of Oxford, as set forth on Exhibit A attached hereto.
Move adoption.
Second by Mr. Prithridge, moved by Mr. Snavely. Anything to add, Ms. Green?
These funds are for the city for CARES response and include, just as a reminder, water bottle filling stations, because drinking fountains aren't allowed right now, intramural programming facilities, and additional cleaning of restrooms to allow our public restrooms to stay open at our parks. And Casey Waddell is available if you have further questions.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution before council?
I do not see any.
All right. Council questions or discussion? I'm not seeing any. So Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken, Mr. Ellerby,
Yes, sorry, I couldn't get my mute done.
Okay. Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
With thanks to city staff, yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, that concludes our resolutions for the evening. We will move on to ordinances. We have one first reading tonight. Ms. Eaton, you may read that whenever you're ready.
Ordinance approving the final dedication and easement plat for Lake Forest Drive in the city of Oxford.
All right, and I will turn this over to Mr. Perry.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Good to see you. This is a plat that actually did not come as a recommendation from Planning Commission. Typically, you see those coming from Planning Commission. Since this is a final plat, it actually bypassed the Planning Commission. This is actually a city project. Many of you may recall as a result of the TIF funding agreement to build a roadway. In order to have that roadway, there needs to be dedicated land for public use. And so this plat, which is located in the area of US 27 South and South Point Parkway, would allow that land to be dedicated. We did find that it's consistent with the preliminary PUD that was originally approved actually by the county in 2004 before it was annexed. So it's consistent with that. There are some changes to the right-of-way land area because of the lack of the connector road actually going as far as it was originally intended to go. So that original land area was about 10 acres. This land area is about 3 acres. So the right-of-way width is 60 feet instead of 100 feet, and it's shorter. It terminates at South Point Parkway. If you recall Mr. Elliott's discussion on the amount of revenue that would be available to build the roadway was the controlling factor here. So I can display that on the screen, but I think you all know the area where we're talking about. And if you've been to Cincinnati or down 27 South at all, you've probably seen the construction equipment, and that give you an idea of where it is. So with this ordinance, this is the first reading. Not only does it dedicate that right of way, but it actually would approve the proposed street name by the property owner. That's proposed as well. And so that's, maybe you don't realize it, but that's actually part of the same approval when anytime you do subdivision plats. So this plat doesn't actually create any development lots. It just dedicates a right of way. So that's the other reason why it did not go through the Planning Commission. So happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
All right, Mrs. Green, is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance before council?
I do not see any raised hands.
All right, I'll turn it over to council for discussion. I see.
Is there a lake anywhere around there?
There is.
Yeah, there is. It's off the plan.
I forgot to mention also, Mr. Mayor and council members, that I do have Katie Dillenberger, who's here acting on behalf as the applicant for the city from Becker Engineers. So she's in the audience, virtual audience, and can get online if necessary to answer any engineering type questions.
All right, I see Mr. Prithridge hands.
And I think I know the answer to this already. So the roadway, the easement width was reduced because in the great hierarchy of things, it's not assumed to be a thoroughfare. At 60 feet though, is that still sufficient width should pedestrian or bike infrastructure want to be added adjacent to the street? Right now it was not engineered with any sidewalks whatsoever, but that's wide enough given the roadway width. If that were to be retrofitted later, can that squeeze in that 60 feet right away?
The land area width, yes. I don't know about whether the grading would be necessary to change, but yes, typically the roadway widths are less than 40 feet wide. So that still allows adequate width for additional walkways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm not seeing any additional hands, so we will see this again at our first meeting in October. If you haven't seen it, it is quite a road. So, all right. It is now 9:30. We have exactly 1 hour until our Zoom time runs out, and we have 7 second readings to get through. So hopefully most of these will go pretty fast, as they are just changes to zoning that we've already reviewed. So On to our first, second reading. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 114101C, entitled Accessory Use Provisions for All Zoning Districts, in Chapter 1141, entitled Accessory, Temporary, Supplemental, and Environmental Regulations, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 114101C, Accessory Use Provisions for All Zoning Districts, in Chapter 1141, entitled Accessory, Temporary, Supplemental, and Environmental Regulations.
Motion to moved by Mr. Snavely, second. Second by Mr. Prithridge. Mr. Perry, any changes?
There are no changes. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Green, anyone from the public who wish to address this ordinance before council?
Not at this time.
All right. Any council questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That ordinance is adopted. We'll move on to our second reading. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
An ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Sections 114301B1, 02B1, 03B1, 04B1, 05B1, 06B1, 065B1, 07B1, 09B1, and 114315B1, all entitled Permitted Uses, and Chapter 1143 entitled Districts, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Sections 114301B1, 02B1, 03B1, 04B1, 05B1, 06B1, 0.065B1, 07B1, 09B1, 15B1, all entitled Permitted Uses, in Chapter 1143 entitled Districts, to be in compliance with Oxford Codified Ordinance, Chapter 114101C, entitled Accessory Use Provisions for All Zoning Districts.
Move adoption.
Second. Second by Mr. Prithridge. Any changes, Mr. Perry?
No changes. I will add, though, that I have Dr. Mark Tremblay, who is our research partnership with Miami, who's in the virtual audience, if there are any data type questions that need to be answered.
All right. Ms. Green, is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance before council?
Not at this time.
All right. Council discussions or questions? I see Mr. Prithridge's hand.
I'm going to be really fast, and this applies to all of these. This is the end of a very long road that has engaged a lot of people and has taken a lot of staff and board and commission time to get this right. And I just want to thank all of the people who've been involved in that long road to get to what I think is going to be the best compromise for the city of Oxford. So thank you to everybody. I'm happy to be at the end of the road, that now we can figure out how to administer this. So thank you.
All right. If there are no more questions, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken, Mayor Smith.
Yes. And I got a thumbs up for Mr. Bracken. So we're good. Okay. That ordinance is adopted. Moving on to our third ordinance. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 114703B, entitled Uses, in Chapter 1147, entitled Conditional Uses, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 114703B, entitled Uses, in Chapter 1147, entitled Conditional Uses, to be in compliance with Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 114101C, entitled Accessory Use Provisions for All Zoning Districts.
Move adoption.
Second.
Seconded.
Second by Councilor Southard. Mr. Perry, any changes to this ordinance?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Green, anyone from the public wishing to address this ordinance?
Not at this time.
All right. Any council questions or discussion? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That ordinance is adopted. All right, we will move on to our fourth second reading. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
An ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 115903, entitled Definitions, beginning with the letter B, and Section 1159.21, entitled Definitions, beginning with the letter T, in Chapter 1159, entitled Definitions, in adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 1159.03, Definitions, beginning with the letter B, and Section 1159.21, Definitions, beginning with the letter T, in Chapter 1159, entitled Definitions, to be in compliance with Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 1141.01C, entitled Accessory Use Provisions for all zoning districts.
Move adoption.
Second?
Seconded.
Second by Counselor Southard. Mr. Perry, any changes?
There are none. Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Green, anyone from the public wishing to address this ordinance before council?
There are none. Thank you.
All right. Council questions or discussion? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That ordinance is adopted. We will move on to our fifth second reading. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Chapter 743, entitled Short-Term Rentals, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Chapter 743, entitled Bed and Breakfasts, Transient Guest Lodging, to be in compliance with Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 1141.01C, Accessory Use Provisions for all zoning districts.
Motion to adopt.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second.
Seconded.
Second by Counselor Southard. Mr. Perry, any changes?
No, there are none.
All right. Ms. Green, anyone from the public wishing to address this ordinance before council?
Not at this time.
All right. Council questions or discussion? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes, that ordinance is adopted. All right, we will move on to, is that our sixth ordinance? I lost my place.
Number 6, yes.
Okay, so now we're moving on to ordinance number 7. You may, or do we need to do number 6?
We need to do number 6.
All right, we're on ordinance number 6. You may read it whenever you're ready.
An ordinance repealing Oxford Property Maintenance Code, Section 310, entitled Rental Permits, and adopting new Property Maintenance Code, Section 310, entitled Rental Permits.
Move adoption.
Second,
Seconded.
second by Counselor Southard. Any changes, Mr. Perry?
No changes.
All right. Mrs. Green, anyone from the public wishing to address this ordinance before council?
No one from the public.
All right. Any council questions or discussion? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right. That ordinance is adopted. We will move on to our 7th second reading tonight. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
Ordinance amending ordinance number 3538, supplemental budget ordinance number 6 to make supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2020.
Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Southard, second by Mr. Snavely. Mr. Newland, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, I did make a slight change of this. Last time it was 214,432. And the first receipt we got from the CARES Act, we received 24 more cents, and we received 12 more cents the second. So I'd increase it by 36 cents to make it all add up.
And that's why you win awards every year. Okay. Ms. Green, anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance before council?
There's no one from the public. Thank you.
All right. Any council questions or discussion? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. And that ordinance is adopted, and that completes our ordinances for the evening. So now we will move on to announcements and communications. And I'll start with City Manager Elliott. You're still muted, Doug. Muted. Muted. Can't hear you.
I know. My finger doesn't move as fast. Sorry about that, folks. I apologize. It's been a long day for all of us, so I'll be brief. I just have a couple comments. I just want to remind you of the work session that we have on the CIP, which is Monday, September 21st, 7 p.m. Of course, it'll be virtual, and I won't comment on it now because we'll talk about it then. And then I also just want to make a plug for the census. Time is running out on our census. September 30th is the last day. So if you've not filled out your census form, please do. They have had folks going door to door. I will share with you that as of September 10th, the Ohio 2020 census self-response rate was 65.7. And the non-response follow-up enumeration adds 22.7% for a total of 92.4% for the state of Ohio. So hopefully we can improve that in the state. They did not have numbers for the non-response follow-up enumeration for the cities. So I don't know. I'm hoping ours is likewise just as strong. So once again, if you know of someone that has not filled out the census report, please make sure they do so. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. In lieu of Chief Jones, would Lieutenant Robinson like to make any comments?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. Certainly an appreciation this week for Chief Jones's external comments and external contacts he has with the community and not only the nation, but the international population at large, as we've had a number of requests and comments and interviews with people all over the world with things regarding the going-ons in Oxford. So an appreciation for that. A big thank you to Lieutenant Fenning for handling a lot of our PIO duties and talking with those people. Just to kind of give a shout out again to Miami University. Their police department is up here every day working with us, trying to find ways to improve, trying to find ways to do things better. And we continue to work on that relationship and move forward as a community and making sure we try to stay as safe as possible. Again, a kudos to our officers. A lot of tough circumstances they're working in. We've asked them to do a lot lately, especially as the students have come back. We're going to ask them to do even more with another 6,000 students coming back this weekend. So we anticipate a busy weekend. Things have kind of quieted down. I think we have a good response from the student community, and then the town community as a whole has helped us out by quieting things down over the past few weeks. So we appreciate that, and we're looking to hopefully a quiet weekend, but I anticipate it being rather busy. So with that said, that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to Mr. Dreisbach. Is there anything you'd like to add tonight?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to give you an update on the Oxford Area Trail, we're very close to opening phase 2. That'll happen middle of next week. I think Jessica's planning a virtual ribbon cutting. We did a walkthrough inspection this morning and had to fight our way through the bikers and hikers and dogs and everybody that's already using the trail unofficially. This gave us 2 paved parking lots, one at DeWitt Cabin and one at Pfeffer Park. We have 2 new bridges, one over 4 Mile Creek and one over Collins Run. About 1.5 miles of trail has been added. And most importantly, I'd like to recognize our city engineer, Scott Otto. This was our first LPA project with ODOT by Scott taking on these local participating agency duties. He saved the city over $210,000. So kudos to engineering and also to Sunesis Construction, who's done an excellent job for us. So we're real excited to get this part of the trail open, and that's all for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Newland, anything you'd like to add tonight? Nothing from Mr. Newland. We'll go around to Assistant Manager Green. Anything you'd like to comment on?
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
All right. We'll go to Mr. Perry. Anything you'd like to add?
One brief update on the Amtrak rail platform that's progressing along. I know that's been of high interest in the past several years, and it's finally starting to take the form of actual procedural steps. So we've partnered with VCRTA in a joint RFP. And so I'm speaking on behalf of all the city administration, but it is progressing, and the responses to the RFP are due back October 19th. And our plan is to do 2 separate contracts, but act as one consultant with the consultant that's hired by both entities. So the multimodal facility and the Amtrak rail platform would be done in sync with each other. So we're excited about seeing that moving forward finally. Thank you.
That's great news. All right. Ms. Eaton, is there anything you'd like to add tonight?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
All right. We will go to the law director. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Kennard?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So we are ready to go around the horn. I'll start with Councilor Ragu.
I just want to say thanks to all the people who are in the room right now and were in the room earlier, virtually making comments and paying attention. You know, I think that we have this huge election coming up. Early voting is starting in just a matter of a couple of weeks. And that's the bare minimum, right, is voting. And then, but beyond that, the people who actually work in local government, state government, federal government, run for office. And I think that's where kind of that next level of being a citizen, what that means. So I just want to show my appreciation for all the people that are taking times away from their private life to vote to a really good cause. And I know that even though it may not seem like it, we're all on the same page. We all want the same things. We want a safe community. We want to make sure everyone has food on the table and they have shelter. So, you know, I think that the more that we can reach out to the public, like we did with the charrette, was really fantastic of trying to make it as transparent as public as possible. So I'm so excited to continue to do more things like that.
Fantastic. Councilor Ellerby.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right. We'll go to Vice Mayor Snavely.
Thank you. I want to thank engineering and service departments for all their work on the trail system. It's just really fabulous, and it's a real addition to our community. So thank you. You always do a great job. I want to thank the Oxford Police Department. I think you do an absolute great job for the city of Oxford, and dealing with the pandemic and the students coming back. I know, and I think all of us on council know how difficult that is. And although this recent issue got, as you say, worldwide coverage, I was very proud of our police department and how you responded, and I was happy to be able to say that nationally. You know, there are still crowds uptown. There are still times when things are bad, so hang in there. and do the best job that you can. I think this is just an opinion, but I think Miami still really needs to do more. If they don't act on any of the things that are being sent their way by the Oxford Police Department, I'll tell you, a lot of these students can afford the fines, and so they're not really too worried about that. But I think if Miami makes a message, then maybe something will happen and it'll get even more serious in their eyes. And I think that's more true with all these new students coming onto campus. I think it would be important for them to hear the word, hey, this is what happens, so be careful and don't do that. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
All right. We will go to Counselor Southard next.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I agree with Councillor Snavely about that. And I have a couple of things to mention. One is that the Self Board, that is the supports for low-income people, has a new headquarters in Hamilton on 415 Monument Avenue. They help with rent assistance and jobs training, and they're doing some great work for our county and our community, and they have been helping in Oxford as well. So they deserve some recognition, and I'm proud to be on their board and to see the new building, parts of which were put together by a group of AmeriCorps volunteers. And in addition, they help with putting ramps and facilities for retrofitting homes so that people can stay in their homes if they're disabled and so on. So they do a lot of good work, and I wanted to have a shout out to them and to their new headquarters, which is a great thing. Also, regarding voting and all that, there is a League of Women Voters, which is, of course, a nonpartisan organization. The Candidates Forum this year, the first one is on September 22nd. It's virtual. It's and then is on September 22nd, Tuesday at 6:30, and then there is another one after that. I also wanted to mention the gift cards and encourage people to buy the gift cards that the city is sponsoring. And I love the Oats Trail. The new Oats Trail section from 73 to Peffer Park is just great. The whole thing is so terrific, and I think it's just a bright spot in this rather dark season. But it is also the New Year. The Jewish New Year begins on this week. Friday is the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, and so Rosh Hashanah is on the 19th, and I want to wish everybody, whether you're Jewish or not, a sweet New Year. Thank you.
All right. We'll go to Councillor Bracken.
Thank you. I would just like to throw my support behind the recommendations of Dr. Baylor and Age Friendly Oxford in what we can do and the community can do to try to prevent, particularly students' community spread, which I think is crucially important to stop as best we can. And I'm going to leave it at that for tonight.
All right. Councillor Prithridge.
So I'll try to be real brief too. I do want to support what other people have said. I've been very proud of the city of Oxford throughout COVID. It's incredible that we've maintained our basic services while dealing with this enormous new task. And I really feel like we've been as much of a model as we can in Southwestern Ohio. And so I'm very proud. And, I saw the new banners that went uptown this week. It looks like in partnership with Butler County. So, I think we've really been at the edge of what we can do, but I think we have to keep moving. I'm really glad. I was just looking at the Miami dashboard. The new cases is really trending down, and so I think we've crested a wave of infections. But I think we're going to have a low-grade challenge on us, no matter what, and in upcoming months. And so I think that we do need to consider new additional things to do, whether that's expanding the mask ordinance. I think even applying the mask ordinance, I think the uptown sidewalks, I don't think you can walk uptown on the sidewalks while complying with a mask ordinance. So I think we may think about how, for example, just to communicate and enforce those sorts of things and keep building that culture. Because I think we've now helped acculturate some people, but we've got a lot of new freshmen who are arriving on campus. Let's raise them up to our standards. And I think Miami's testing has increased, but I'm in agreement with Vice Mayor Snavely. I'd like to see still more proactive stances from them, particularly with the off-campus population. And as per my point before, I think we all need to figure out how to live with this. So programming, proactive things that we can do that make life livable. So I want to circle back to the Oxford Area Trail System. We didn't know we were planning this for pandemic, but boy, the time is just right. So anything that we can do to give our citizens a way to feel safe and healthy and happy, let's keep being creative with that. And we do have the CARES Act money, so let's keep doing that. So thank you to all of the staff time and our community partners for helping get through a tough time. So thank you.
All right. I'll be brief too. Continue my praise for our first responders and for our police. As a lot of you know, I drive around on Thursday and Friday, Saturday nights between 10 and 11, and the Oxford police are beating me to the punch. Every secret alley I thought you guys didn't know about, you're there ahead of me. So great job. Just your presence and the cruisers in town, I think, has a real effect on how people party and what they do when they gather. I would like to welcome the first years and second years to town, especially the first years, to what will be the strangest semester of your life. And I do want to offer up some praise because there are an awful lot of Miami students that are doing what they need to do, that are hunkering down, wearing their masks, keeping their gatherings low, not hosting parties, not going to parties. And I don't want them to be forgotten because I know a lot of you out there and I know who you are. On the other hand, there are still an awful lot of you on Thursday and Friday and Saturday nights that are not doing what you're supposed to. So with another 4,000 people in town this weekend, we're going to be watching really closely. And if we start to see the parties again spiral out of control and the gatherings go south, we may have to look at doing something else. And I'm going to tell you, I'm the last person in the world that wants to invoke a curfew, but there I've said it. So just something to think about. So again, everybody hang in there, get outside if you can. This was a beautiful evening. And at that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Prithridge, second by Mr. Snavely. Again,